on the edge of love, but never to believe. You took my armor off and did it delicately, and I let my guard down to show you it's underneath. Thank God that you were man enough to come answer my mama's prayers. You asked the question, I said yes, but I'm scared. 'Cause I've never worn white, but I wanna get it right. Yeah, I really wanna try with you. No, I've never worn white, but I'm standing here tonight 'cause I really wanna say I do. I do. See us in 60 years with a full family tree. I do. Give my blood, sweat, and tears to reach your destiny. I do. 'Cause love is a minefield. Let's take this walk, baby. I do. 'Cause at the end of it all, I choose you and you choose me. Thank God I was woman enough to come answer your father's prayers. You asked the question, I could tell you were scared. 'Cause I never want white, but I wanna get it right. Yeah, I really wanna try with you.
Ask everybody to take their seats if they would, please.
Well, welcome everyone, and thank you very much for joining us here at the University of South Carolina, the Pastides Alumni Center. And I see Dr. Pastides on the screen there. He's in Ireland, I believe. We're glad to have you with us, sir. I want to thank all of you for being here. This is very important. We've had a lot of challenges in our lives and over the history of our wonderful, unique state, and this is certainly one of them. I don't know we've ever had anything quite like this, but I am confident that as reflected by those of you who have agreed to serve as a part of Accelerate South Carolina, which is to take us back to full economic vigor and competition where we were and beyond before the pandemic hit us, just looking at the talent and the experience and knowledge and understanding here represented in this room gives me great confidence once again in the people of South Carolina and what we're able to do. And unlike other places, we work together so very closely. It's like a family. And as a lot of our business leaders have said from other parts of the world, they say South Carolina is a handshake state. When somebody gives their word, they keep it. And we work together for the benefit of all concerned. And I think that our response to this pandemic in our state has illustrated that again, because the compliance, the understanding, and the insight into things and the loyalty to one another, being good neighbors, has been demonstrated vividly in places all over our state. And recently down in Hampton County with the tornadoes, and I think the last count is we had 26 of them altogether. One of them was, I think, over 30 miles long, 3/4 of a mile wide, with speeds up to 165 miles an hour. We've recently in the tornadoes, we've had more tornado activity just in last week than we've had ever before in our state. But as a sign of South Carolina, as you know, we had linesmen coming in from different power companies around surrounding states, and as well as parts of South Carolina, to restore power to those people in those counties. Oconee and Pickens, Hampton, Orangeburg, Calhoun, and others. And it was the most interesting thing because those homes were devastated in those areas. Yet the information I got back from the power companies was all these visiting workers who were working to put the lines up or a little bit sad to see the lines all up, because that meant they had to go home and they wouldn't be able to eat all the fried chicken and all the other things that were being cooked for them in the churches and those homes still standing. It really says something about the people of South Carolina. So I am confident that our solution, what we can together can decide, can recommend, can understand, and how to get our economy revitalized and back up to full strength and beyond. We can learn lessons from what has happened. We have been able to identify bottlenecks and red tape and things like that perhaps we ought to remove permanently and not just temporarily. But what we're going to have to do is determine ways with your advice, and we're getting advice from a lot of different places, as well as other friends and neighbors and elected officials, including governors in other states, as well as the president and the vice president, on all issues. And I ought to tell you that I talked to the president yesterday, and he said we are doing an excellent job in South Carolina. And the vice president said the same thing the day before. So there are a lot of eyes on us, on our state. Our people of our state are dependent on us. And as we have been in other things, I think we can be a splendid example and a splendid leader for people all around the country. So I'm proud, very proud, to have all of you that are willing to give of your time and experience and be here under these circumstances. We are going to have to emphasize, as we move forward, testing, personal protective equipment, and tracking as never before. We have learned how to social distance. That was a word that none of us had heard before this came along. But I'm happy and proud to say that our people know how to do that now. So while we had to learn how to do that coming in, we know how to do it now as we get out and as we lift the restrictions that we've placed on our businesses and on ourselves. And on that, I need to tell you that we did it a little bit differently from most of our other states. There were some others along with us who, instead of trying to list all the essential and non-essential businesses and make decisions back and forth, we looked at which businesses, which activities were those that presented the great risk, that we could isolate those activities, hold those activities down. So we came with you would call it a lighter touch than they used in other states. You remember we started with the restaurants, and then we went from there to the beauty parlors and barber shops, and there are a lot of us right now that are dying for a haircut, so I can't wait. And then we went on to the small retailers, and along the way we had the beaches. We wanted the local authorities to handle the beaches, and then it turned out that they were being overwhelmed, so we took that over. And just recently we relaxed our supervision of those beaches and turned that back over to the local mayors and councils, and they made their decisions. They made their wise decisions whether to keep them open or keep them closed. But because we went in looking for those areas of high concentration of people, physical contact, close contact, because we limited the strength of our operations there, we're able, I believe, to come out of it. Now that we've learned how to social distance and all things connected with that, we can come out without having gone in as deeply with as much cause of needing repair than some of our neighbors have. So we have a great opportunity to get back to where we were before, and that is we were one of the leaders in the nation on economic growth and development, and we have to continue that. But we must do so carefully. The last thing any of us want is to have a relapse, as they would call it in medical terms, where you think you're well and you go back about your business, and then all of a sudden, whatever the illness or disease was hits you harder than it did before. That could happen. It's probably going to happen in some places, but we do not want that to happen here. So I'm confident with the insight and the advice and guidance that this group can give along with that other groups will be given around the state, other local groups. I'm confident that we can work our way out of this with great success. We want to go as quickly as we can, as safely as we can, to restore our economic vigor while also restoring our personal health. Just a couple of last points. A lot of money has been provided coming from the federal government. We have had the small business plan. It'll be spoken of later. There are a lot of plans. Some of them have not been funded yet. Some took a while to get funded, but some of them have been. The PPP, Small Business Plan, we've had 22,933 applications that have been fulfilled for a total of $3.8 billion. That was part of the $350 billion package passed by the Congress, and there's $310 billion more coming that will be split up, and I understand it's on a first-come, first-served basis, so our businesses should go to their bankers and be ready, because when the money runs out, it'll be gone. Unemployment claims in South Carolina, we've paid out, if I have the figures right, $510 million since this began. So a lot of our people who unfortunately are out of work because of the virus are able, some of them we hope, most of them we hope, to find some unemployment relief from one of these avenues. But we don't want any more deaths. We don't want any more. We just don't want any more. We know there are going to be some. It's inevitable. But we want to do the best we can in this forum for advice and guidance to keep us going, to keep us alert, and to take us back to where we were before this came and beyond. And with that, I would like to end my remarks and call on Mike Hamblett to start us. Is he here?
Yes.
There he is, if you please.
Let's pray together. Father, as we come before you today, we're in a situation that we have never experienced before. It is a common thing in that we have no experience in this. But Lord, we thank you for having a great state in which we can live with so much opportunity. And we pray, Lord, that in the midst of this crisis, first of all, we pray for all of our citizens that are being impacted right now, for moms and dads, and for those that work in factories and work in stores, and teachers and educators, and Lord, especially for those, our front line, those who are on the front line for us in taking care of our people. God, we pray for all these, for those in the medical field. And Lord, we pray for all those that are trying to just make it right now. And for so many South Carolinians that are standing with them and helping to them and ministering them in so many ways. Lord, we pray. We pray for our leadership. Pray for our governor, our lieutenant governor, all of our leadership in our state, that, Lord, you would bind them together and give them great wisdom and to know what to do and how to do this and how we can do this together. God, we come together today, and there's so many in this room with so much ability, but Lord, we pray you'd bring it all together. And we pray that you'd give us insight that we haven't had before. That, Lord, you'd give us understanding in something that we've never even seen. And every day we're saying, I've never seen anything like this before. But that, Lord, you'd give us understanding to move forward. We pray that you'd give us boldness, because we know our state is looking for leadership. And we pray that we would bring that out of a sense of what is good for our entire state, from the upstate to the low country to the Midlands, Lord, for every home, for every person that is there. And God, most of all, we pray that you would guide us. This is beyond us. It is more than anything we've ever seen before. So we look to you, and we look to those that you put in leadership. And God, we pray you'd watch over them, protect them, that you'd give them, once again, that great understanding, guide their steps. And Lord, together, while we may never look at this as an enjoyable experience, we'll come out of this together and say that we learned from this, and that, God, you made us stronger in this as a result of our response. We pray you bless those who lead us today. We pray that you'd bless our chairman as he directs us. And, God, we pray that this will be used for the people of our state. And we pray this in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mike Hamblett. I know everyone has a mask. It's a little difficult to speak into these microphones when you have it on, but feel free to wear it whenever you like. Lieutenant Governor.
Now we're going to ask the Lieutenant Governor to say a few remarks, and then we'll move forward with the agenda after that.
Well, I just want to say, to start off, thank you to the Governor for your amazing leadership through this very difficult time, and for assembling all of you here today. As I look around the room, you are an amazing group of leaders, and so thank you for donating your time for our state. You know, our South Carolina motto, "While I breathe, I hope," has never been as profound as it is right now. Over the past 6 weeks, individuals from across South Carolina and our nation have collectively been holding their breath. Businesses, families, schools, and more have been in a holding pattern, waiting to see what happens next. And as South Carolina endeavors to reopen our economy, this committee is faced with a task that is bigger than ourselves, it's bigger than anyone in this room, and yet it is my belief that in working together, we will build a foundation plan that future leaders will be able to draw upon should we ever face something similar in our state. Our work over the next 30 days will not only impact South Carolina today, but for many years to come. And it is also my hope that our collaboration will be a light to many and a message of hope to all South Carolinians to be able to breathe again. So again, thank you all for coming and giving your time here with AccelerateSC.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. I'll go over a few kind of logistics, some matters. First, I want to thank Commissioner Hugh Weathers from the Department of Agriculture. Sir, thank you for being here. Superintendent Spearman, who's going to be presenting later, thank you for being here. Wanted to thank the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House for their appointment of their advising members to our resources subgroup, Senator Tom Davis, Senator Joe Malloy, Senator Ross Turner, Representative Tommy Pope, Representative David Weeks, and Representative Lee Hewitt. So want to thank them for their participation as well. So one of the things that I just want to talk about is kind of where we are, where we're going, and what you can expect. When the governor reached out to me and said, "James, I need you to take up this effort," he said, "Look, this is a working group. This is not some blue ribbon panel. This is I want some real recommendations so that we can make some real decisions to help South Carolina families move forward economically and in a safe manner." And so I will be your cruise director during this whole endeavor, and we'll move forward. One thing I want to acknowledge, and I sent emails to all the members of of AccelerateSC. We've already got scheduled subgroup meetings. Those are scheduled for next week. We have the governance subgroup, which is going to be on Monday. I'm going to ask Mayor Knox White to kind of serve in a leadership role in helping to guide that group. And Sim Singh from the governor's office will be assisting him. Our protection component is going to be coordinated by DHEC, Rick Toomey, and the folks that I'm going to have assisting him in that are Dr. Cole and Christian Sora. The response group with Secretary Bobby Hitt. I'm going to ask Helen Hill to help in leading that endeavor with him. And then in the resources component, which Director Marsha Adams and Brian Gaines are the coordinating state agencies, and going to ask Greg Ryberg to help lead in that effort. One thing, so for your expectation, those 4 meetings are already scheduled for you. You should expect, as I put out to everybody, that the governor and lieutenant governor will attend. The direction I've gotten from the governor is he wants you all to have good discussion. He is there. The governor and lieutenant governor are there. They want to listen. They want to hear what you're saying, but they want you to have good discussion. During that time, your coordinating state agencies will have additional assisting state agencies that will assist with providing information. They've already been hard at work. They'll reach out to the various stakeholders, other folks in the business community to gather information to discuss with you. I will also say that you should reach out to your spheres of influence. Reach out to the folks you know. That's how we can get the best information. This is a wonderful cross-section of our state. You know, we've got state experts in DHEC, epidemiologists, doctors. And so what we've done with this group is to bring in folks from the outside to work with our experts to help come up with good recommendations for the governor. The other thing that I'd like to mention is the following week, which will be not next week, the following week, this large group will come together again early in the week. We'll determine the date, and I'll send it out to everybody as early as I can. But that's really where we're going to have an opportunity for our 4 component groups to come in to provide some recommendations to the governor. And again, I think the charge has been pretty clear. We want to help revitalize our economy and do it in a safe way to protect our citizens, to protect those in the workplace, protect our customers. The last thing I would point out for y'all is that you should take an opportunity to reach out to those who are vulnerable, those who are in our vulnerable communities. I think the governor has been pretty clear that those who are older, our minority communities, those with deficient immune systems, are folks that we are very, very concerned about. And so I think as you are looking at the recommendations you're making, let that be something that you consider in your mind. We've, through our great, the things the governor's already put forward, and as we've social distanced, we've been able to have a positive impact. But as he has said, this continues, and so we have to be smart. I would also, real quick, there's hand sanitizer on your tables. Lou Kennedy from Nephron, I want to thank you for that, and for our masks. That was kind of you to do that. These are your tables. They're not moving. All of our meetings take place here. And so we're going to social distance. It'll feel a little weird, okay? I'm just going to be honest. But we need to do this in the most effective, impactful way we can. So I'm going to beg for your indulgence to, let's work through the new normal a little bit, all right? We're going to have to go outside of our comfort zone sometimes to do this. It'll be weird not shaking hands or hugging necks. We'll get there one day. We'll get there. Because, again, as the governor said, we want to give our citizens hope and confidence in knowing that they can move forward. We're now going to go through, hear from some of our state agency heads to give some brief remarks. I'm going to ask everybody, you'll come to the podium so everybody knows after somebody speaks at the podium, that podium is sanitized. We get sanitizer all over it, and we get it all cleaned up for the next individual. So we will continue to exercise that social distancing and sanitizing. I'll call on Secretary of Commerce Bobby Hitt to give us an update and let us know what's going on in the world of commerce.
Social distance back here.
Either way, Bobby.
For all of my friends out there in the audience, I know I look better with the mask on, but I'll take it off to talk. Delighted to be here today. It's an unusual circumstance, but I'm glad to be here with this great group as we look forward for this next step in South Carolina in order to reclaim what is ours and get our folks ready for this change. As you can tell, I've been ensconced in my lake house for almost 7 weeks now. Both of my doctors tell me that's where I need to be. And the others that I've talked to on the phone, like Dave Cole and others, have told me the same thing. So I've been staying there so you can see the hair's growing out. The governor and I are in a contest, see which one of us look like our colonial ancestors by the time this is done. I've even threatened to walk into the agency with a ponytail, Governor, so it's going to be a heck of a ride from here. At any rate, Commerce, as our lead economic development agency, we have been steadfast in our commitment to providing business-critical assistance during this unprecedented time. We have learned very quickly, with great support from our IT team and our administrative team in Commerce. We are working out of our office in a very effective and impactful way. We've been working closely with the governor's office, our partner agencies, and other organizations to equip companies with timely resources. As part of the emergency management system, our ESF 24 team, which is manned by Commerce, has led the COVID-19 response for the business community. The ESF 24 and Commerce's business services teams have been working around the clock, providing support to industry and individuals statewide. Since mid-March, we have responded to more than 2,000 inquiries from our companies across the state. Everything you can imagine. I have to lay off employees. How do I do it? What's the best way? What are the rules? All about the various functions of government. So we're very proud of what we've been able to do during that period of time. Even more impressive, I'm happy to tell you that our average response is within 24 hours. In fact, we're above 95th percentile on responding to all inquiries within 24 hours. Our Commerce's COVID-19 Business Resources Center has become a go-to website. We've worked hard. The state officials are referring businesses to our website for resources, including non-essential business guidelines, clarification of designation business forms, employment benefit resources, small business assistance, and more. The clarification of business forms served as the clearinghouse for companies seeking guidance on whether they could remain open or not. To date, we've added more than 5,600 clarification inquiries. We've also had more than 151,000 page visits, 252,000 page views, and over 5,500 downloads from our site. Our business services team has played a pivotal role in providing connections for both existing industry and on the supplier side. Existing industry reps, that's a team within our organization that frequent our companies all the time. We personally visit about 600 of our companies a year, and so our reps have been hot on the phones, connecting with manufacturers, our local economic development. I'm from manufacturing, most recently anyway, for the last 20 years or so. We're used to wearing PPE. PPE is part of the manufacturing environment, and we're used to not being in clusters. We're not in offices. We're in a production environment. And so manufacturing companies have been able to adjust. But I'll have companies call me and say, my customer wants the product, my folks want to work, well, what do you want me to do? I said, I want you to be smart and educate your employees, and I want you to get your HR team and others and go out and make sure your plant is safe for your employees. Let's remember, we were at 3% unemployment. These employees are valuable to all our companies. We would like them all to come back as the economy comes back, but we have been hurt in some areas very dramatically, and Dwayne's going to come up and talk about one of the areas, obviously, with tourism. But supply chain disruptions worldwide are causing all kinds of problems for some of our big manufacturing companies. Our entire automotive sector is idle. The management teams are there working on new plans and strategies, and we hope to have them open next month. But one of the critical issues is our supply lines. And I've spoken to the governor. We have a number of his counterparts around the country who have more restrictive orders than we do, and as a result, some of the supplier plants that we need to open up are in other jurisdictions, and you can bet that between our agency and the governor's office, we'll be working with those states to try to get those open in a timely way for our manufacturing companies. But we also have looked to see what we could connect them with in-state. But if you're talking about things like machined parts, like car parts and the like, the likelihood of us being able to change to an in-state supplier is pretty slim. But we have done that for some companies that need some things that maybe are not quite as in high volume or high tolerances. We've been the connecting point for companies retooling their operations to produce a variety of materials and goods used in life-saving medical equipment or donating these critical items. Along with South Carolina MEP, the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, South Carolina Bio, the South Carolina Hospital Association, the COVID-19 Emergency Supply Collaborative Web Portal was unveiled by us last week to match providers with organizations in need. To date, we've had 55 healthcare providers tell us what their PPE needs are going to be go forward. We have 53 companies that have told us what their needs are. We have 12 organizations and individuals who have donated substantial goods to our cause, and 146 of our manufacturing companies and suppliers have offered to supply PPE to us here in South Carolina, which to me is remarkable. This is a call to arms where our manufacturers say, we will convert a line to make these materials to bring South Carolina back. That's a very important thing from my point of view and the governor's point of view, let me assure you. Providing guidance and financial resources has also been a critical part of our effort. The governor mentioned about the SBA and a variety of loan programs that SC companies are already benefiting from. I think he mentioned we had just under 23,000 loans approved, equating to $3.8 billion. There's another program called EIDLE that makes loans equating to about $54 million. We did 274 of those, and more than 9,658 of our companies have had advances processed, equating to $43 million. And as the governor said, there's more money coming. But our companies need this guidance. I'm on the JETA board. The other day we looked at a program where we will be providing some funds to our Business Development Corp to make sure that companies who need under 100,000, who have been a little bit left behind, will have an opportunity to get in there as well. Some of our companies are fairly small and they need less money, but nonetheless they're still vitally important to us. To assist Governor's AccelerateSC Task Force, Commerce and the SC Chamber, I see Ted over there, developed a survey together to gather data from businesses that will help guide decisions on how to reopen and revitalize South Carolina's industry during the next 60 days. The distribution of that starts today. Support for small business is imperative, especially financing. That's the critical issue for all of our small businesses. Lenders are eager to open the application process when the new money is appropriated. It has been now, it's just been appropriated, or whether it passed today, I'm not up on the latest, so we're eager to go. We're also focusing on identifying industry sectors and communities not harmed by COVID-19 that may not come back or not at the same level, most harmed, excuse me, I didn't mean to say not harmed, most harmed by this, who may not come back or may not come back at the same level, and then determine how to best help them, as well as their employees, in terms of looking at how we marshal our efforts in workforce development to make sure we can move people around who are available and wanting to work as new things start to change. There will be change. When the governor and I were together the other day, we both knew that we're looking at a new normal. We don't know exactly what it is, and that's what this group has got to help us figure out. We know there's a new normal, and the new normal is going to be lead South Carolina to, I hope, greater levels. But things are going to change. There will be change. And one of the things I noticed that this week I stay in touch with my friends in Germany. Germany has started the unveiling process as we are. They've started turning on some of their small businesses. But the public in Germany, like the public in South Carolina, is not going to go out and shop just because the lights are on. Part of what we have to do is think through and make people feel comfortable that it's safe again. Right now, I think, as many of my employers said to me when I talked to them, especially the big ones, we're going to have to redevelop our trust with our employees again, because they have been watching the news and cable channels and the like, and they're not sure. And we need to make sure our workplaces are safe, our business places are safe, and people feel good coming back to them. That's part of what we have to do. And, of course, when Dwayne talks, that's what we'll have to do for our tourists as well. We also need to identify gaps in what is available and what is needed by these impacted industries. Federal programs need to be evaluated and business programs provided so they are properly utilized. The workforce is another area we've got to focus on addressing. What does it look like for companies that cannot immediately or ever bring back the number of employees from before COVID-19? We need to make sure we have ready access to those folks along with all our partner agencies to try to make sure we can move them in a direction that will be successful for them. For companies wanting to do the right thing, will they have access to all the PPEs? They're asking us what the protocols are. So in addition to the social protocols we have to have, we need to make sure all our businesses have good protocols, and we rely on DHEC and our medical advisors on how to best do that. I don't know how 4,000 people can walk into a BMW plant and be tested in front of a shift. So we have to think of ways that this is going to work, because it's not as easy to pull off as you might think. And then the question is, how often do you test? I mean, I have a famous sister-in-law who is a doctor, and she keeps telling me, you know, every time you go out, you're starting over on your 14 days, Bobby, so I'll see you in 2 weeks. No, I'm just kidding. The technical college system has a robust online technical training, and we can probably put some people into training if we can find the proper resources. But how do we increase those offerings while keeping costs down for students? So we have a number of great opportunities in front of us, despite the hill we've got to climb. In the manner of our team addressed at the onset of COVID-19, we will continue to answer the call, and we will help the businesses, community navigate their next steps. It has been robust, ladies and gentlemen. I have talked to more companies. My wife told me when I went up and sat in my office, which is up on the second floor of our lake house, it's a wide open house kind of thing. She said, my big voice just filled the whole damn house. So I now live in the front guest room of my house. It's my video studio. It is my broadcast studio. And, you know, Governor, I'm getting away. I'm pretty good at running this thing from home. But anyhow, we'll just see how it turns out. We will be there, and we will all be together. Commerce works with many other agencies. I've never been prouder of the partnership that we have with all our sister agencies and working with the Governor's Office and AccelerateSC to once again demonstrate our state's resilience. And I thank you very much for all being here, and we will succeed. Thank you very much.
One thing I'm gonna do is, because we all have individual microphones and they're all turned off, and I'm not trying to be, look, Molly Spearman, I'm not a good teacher, but I know we probably need to raise our hands if we need to speak because of the microphone. So I'd beg your indulgence on that. Again, this is one of those new normal kind of things. So if there's a question you might have, please raise your hand so we can see that. Dwayne Parrish, Director Dwayne Parrish from the Department of Parks, Recreation, and Tourism will talk to us briefly.
Good afternoon. First, I want to say a big thank you to all the members of the task force, AccelerateSC, for being here, taking time out of not only your day-to-day but future meetings. I want to thank you, Governor, Lieutenant Governor, and James as well for forming this task force. And then a special thanks to two people, Helen Hill and Bobby Williams, who are here and for representing our subgroup on response. So I feel very confident after being in this room today that we'll come out of this much better on the other side. So what I wanted to do today was just take just a moment to kind of walk you through what tourism is, what it means to the state economy, where we are today as of now, and then sort of what we're working on. So if you would, who's doing, Zach, if you would, there you are. So assets around the economy, this is up on the screen as well as in your notebook, about halfway back if you'd like to follow through. So A little bit about where we are and what we mean. So there are roughly 1,200 hotels, and I'm not going to go through all of these, but 35,000 individual short-term rentals. Before you say that is a lot, but let me just say some of those, like small inns and B&Bs, have multiple rooms. 9,600 restaurants, all of which are required for just takeout, delivery, and drive-through right now, many of which are closed right now. 300-plus golf courses around the state. They are operating the majority, but however, there are some are closed, particularly along the coast in the Grand Strand area, because they rely so much on people from out of town. The beaches, lakes, rivers, all of you know and are very familiar with those. Our 47 state parks. We closed down parks on March 27th. We have announced a plan as of yesterday to reopen May 1st. That is a tentative date, much like many things these days, but we have a plan in place with new protocols to try to make people feel safe when they come back in. The many attractions around our state, you think of the State Museum, the State Aquarium, Riverbank Zoo, Fort Sumter, national parks, sporting events around the state like the RBC Heritage, the NASCAR event at Darlington, the Volvo Car Open, Monday after the Masters, Steeplechase, BMW Pro-Am. I could go on and on. All of those things, as you know, are not taking place at the moment. However, some good news. The RBC Heritage announced they will be playing a made-for-television event, no spectators, June 8th through the 18th through the 21st. Will be broadcast live on the Golf Channel and CBS. And then, actually before that, Darlington will broadcast a race as well with NASCAR. So we do have some things, the lights at the end of the tunnel in regard to some events. So, go back one more there. So a little bit about tourism's impact on South Carolina's economy. So we employ about 1 in 10 jobs in South Carolina, which is about 214,000 of our state's residents. We generate $1.8 billion in state and local taxes. I'll say that again, $1.8 billion in state and local taxes. Just a snapshot of what those taxes are: state sales tax, local sales tax, statewide accommodation taxes, local accommodation taxes, personal and corporate income taxes, property taxes, fuel taxes, admission taxes, and hospitality taxes. Our visitors pay a dramatic amount of taxes that is showing up, quite frankly, right now. So economic trends. So going into this year, we had our 7th record year for 2019. You can see all the numbers. These are our metrics on the screen in front of you. Each of those is up dramatically. Even room nights sold. That's how many people came and stayed overnight, up 2%. Admissions tax collections, that's sort of the ticket tax, if you will, on the state, up nearly 5%. State park revenue up 10%. So going into this year, for the first couple of months, particularly January, we were off to a great start out of the races. And then you'll see on the next slide, here's what happened. This is hotel occupancy beginning at the first week of February. Each of those green bars represents 1 week. And you can take a look and don't even have to see the numbers, the bottom out there as it happens. The first week is the first week of February, and the last week is last week, actually. So you see what's happened in regard to hotel occupancy down dramatically, running anywhere from 20 to 25% in hotels. Obviously, that is not sustainable over a length or an extended period of time. Tourism revenue and percent changes. I talked about tax. Well, those taxes are typically percentages of revenues. You see a similar trend here on the purple bars of what happened with that. You see that bottom out at 87%. 87% down. That's dramatic. Not sustainable for any length of time, so to speak. So you'll see that impact come up. Jobs. You see the employment. I mean, look at that's national numbers, but look at tourism and hospitality, what it represents, and compared to some of the others. Tourism accounts for about nearly 4% of GDP in the United States, but right now, nationally, we're at 36% of unemployment. We've taken a really, really big hit on our workforce on tourism. So, if you can go on to the next one. So these are some of the projections of what we lose. This is the United States is projected to lose $520 billion in travel spending, $80 billion in taxes in the calendar year of 2020. Tourism job losses, as I mentioned earlier, will comprise about 1/3 of all job losses due to COVID-19. And an estimated 8 million travel-related jobs will be lost by the end of this month, with 2.9 million travel-related jobs still unrecovered by the 1st of next year. So our current South Carolina tourism industry is sort of where we are. As of April 22nd, 571 hotels were closed in South Carolina. That's almost 50% of our inventory of hotels. Fortunately, in the last few days, a few have reopened, but we are still dramatically closed up in regard to hotels. You know, it is unsustainable for a hotel, as I mentioned earlier, to continue occupancy at a 20% level. Unemployment for the weeks ending March 28th, April 4th, and we just got the numbers this week. Just these 3 counties, Horry, Greenville, and Charleston, they accounted for, it was over 50,000 claims you see on this slide. It's now 73,000 claims just from those 3 counties. Obviously, Horry and Charleston in particular, much more tourism-based, but even Greenville has a large segment of tourism. So we've taken that hit. There's another one after that. The next one. That's all you have? There's one on public beach access. It's in the notebook. You don't have it on there, Zach? Okay. Not a problem. Well, so there's a public beach access. It's in your notebook. You can sort of follow along. Governor McMaster order public beach access is closed on March 30th. That order was rescinded on Monday, April 20th, allowing local governments to have that discretion regarding availability of public beach access. As of April 22nd, only North Myrtle Beach, Mayor Hadley, Horry County and Beaufort County had completely reopened public beach access. Beaches in Surfside Beach, Folly Beach, Sullivan's Island, Isle of Palms, and Edisto Beach were open with limited access restricted to area residents. Myrtle Beach, Pawleys Island, Georgetown County, Charleston County, Hilton Head Island, and all state park beaches remain closed until a later date. There are varying degrees of dates in there. I mentioned state parks will reopen on May 1st. So the next page in your notebook. So projected tourism revenue. I don't want you to get lost in those numbers, but there are a couple of key ones on that slide. If you take a look there, you'll look and see international tourism will be expected to be down 90% this year. As you can imagine, international flights have all but stopped. 90% down on international flights. And most of that 10% that is there took place in January and February. But overall, and here's the one, if you look at the number in red there, we expect tourism revenue and tourism business as a whole to be down about 50% for this year. Obviously, it's down much more now, but we do expect income to gradually increase in revenues between now and the end of the calendar year. So if you go to the next page in there, you'll see a little bit about recovery marketing. So we're working on a recovery campaign as I speak for tourism in South Carolina. It's designed to deliver that brand presence. It's already out there with people. Keep them top of mind for when the time comes that they're comfortable to travel. But our campaign will focus on the primary drive markets, if you see in that map there. I just don't believe people will be ready to fly in the next 60 days. Just not going to happen. So we focus on the drive market, and quite frankly, we have to even break that down. We have to know what's going on. Is there a stay-at-home order in those other states? The good news is, with today's technology, we can digitally target individual states for tourism marketing. So we'll focus on that once we think that's okay. We get into that phase of a call to action. But right now, it is dream now, discover later. That is our campaign theme at this point. We'll amp that up a good bit on May 1st, but still that dream phase. The call to action phase will come later. And then lastly, sort of a next steps, guidance on tourism businesses. What is the new normal? What does the new dining room look like for a restaurant to reopen? How many chairs are around a hotel swimming pool? What is the new fitness center? How many people are allowed in a fitness center in a hotel? All those things are being worked on now, and certainly this committee will work on over the next few weeks to see what that is, and we'll be ready when the time comes. I look forward to the next meeting to be able to present to you what exactly some of those things are. One last key point I'll bring up, and Bobby Hitt and I have talked quite a bit about this. He mentioned it earlier when he talked about confidence. If you remember after 9/11, it was not okay to fly. That stopped dramatically one day. But it came back in less than a year, and it came back partly because of the creation of TSA. I know many of us, badmouth that a lot of times, but it made it okay to fly in the consumer's mind after that. That's what we've got in front of us now. We need to make it okay for people to travel again, for people to shop again, for people to do those things that bring our economy back. We can do it. I'm confident we can do it. With healthcare's help, with industry's help, and with government's help, we can make this happen. I appreciate your time today, and with that, I'm done. And do you want me to take any questions, James? Or
I think we're good, Dwayne.
Okay.
We'll move forward. And really today, so everybody knows, is we want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to get some information as we break up into these smaller groups where we get to the more granular level. That's where I think, we play that game Stump the Chump to see if we can fool our state agency directors with some good questions. Next, man, y'all are not good with any of my humor today. I mean, that's bad. Next, I'd like to call on Director Rick Toomey with DHEC. As Director Toomey's coming up, I think we all know that Director Toomey's agency, the one benefit we have with DHEC, and as the governor's told me many times, he has looked at me and he said, James, we have a lot of really smart people and experts at DHEC. We've got epidemiologists and doctors and all these folks in the medical field. So we need to make sure we're listening to Director Toomey. So,
thank you. Again, Governor, Lieutenant Governor, thank you for coordinating, putting this, and what a wonderful group of people. I know many of you, and I'm looking forward to getting to have an opportunity to interact appropriately, social distancing with the others as we attack and confront this issue facing all of South Carolinians. And Zach, you're going to drive it? First of all, I've got my mask, and I wanted to give a shout out because the agencies of this state have been working so hard and working together. Brian Sterling from the Department of Corrections gave me this mask, actually gave DHEC 2,000 masks for us to distribute to homeless shelters. I'm glad that the one that I got doesn't have property of Department of Corrections on it. I also want to take a second to introduce Dr. Joan Duvey. Dr. Duvey is our new Director of Public Health. We were going to kind of tag team this, but with social distancing and cleaning of the podium, I'll just take the slides. But she joined us last Friday. So talking about fortuitous timing for joining a state, we are really excited to have Joan on board and looking forward to working with her. She comes to us from Indiana. So a quick look at the agenda. We're going to be quick on our presentation, giving an overview of what's been going on for DHEC. But we have just had, again, extraordinary work working with our sister agencies across the state, working with all of our healthcare facilities from nursing homes, long-term care, hospitals, physician practices. We are all engaged in this effort. If you look at the second slide by the numbers, as of yesterday, April 22nd, 4,761 South Carolinians have been confirmed to have the COVID-19 virus. 140 South Carolinians, that is friends, family members, acquaintances that we all know, neighbors, have passed away. Our highest number reported date was 276 cases on April the 14th. We have been very fortunate with the hospital, the acute care industry in reducing elective and surgical and elective procedures. They have helped maintain a good supply of beds, and that is at a cost to many of those hospitals that they earn a significant portion of their revenues from elective and procedures. 43,111 tests have been conducted. Our public health lab in Columbia has completed 12,681. And for the first 2 to 3 weeks, we were the only lab that was authorized to test. Other institutions came up quickly, got through the FDA approval process. The governor assisted in interacting and helping cut some of the red tape. And MUSC and Prisma and many others have stepped up to assist not only DHEC, but many other outside labs in providing the important tests. We have a zero backlog at DHEC and have a less than 48-hour turnaround time for the tests that come to us. We have a care line that has had 19,338 calls. As a statistic since February 1st, we've had 16.5 million views to our website. That's scdhec.gov/COVID-19. It has an extensive amount of data that we did not try to duplicate in this quick presentation. It's a very, as we all know, this is the duh statement. This is a very serious, evolving healthcare event. We have about an average of 162 patient infections being diagnosed per day. That's a slight decrease from the 180 infections during the first week of April. Governor McMaster issued a stay-at-home or work order on April the 6th. The data shows that social distancing and staying at home, reducing unnecessary trips out, reducing the number of people getting together, helps stop or eliminate the spread of the disease. DHEC is working to avoid the problems that most impacted areas are seeing related to the stress on the healthcare system, including hospitalization rates, ventilator availability, and others. The agency is doing this by prioritizing limited resources. A side note, there's a lot of people that recognize it, there's a lot of commercials that recognize it, but the healthcare workers are doing a phenomenal job under a great deal of stress. And that's just not the acute care, that's the long-term care, that is hospices, that is, you name it, the healthcare workers are under a great deal of stress, and they have done a phenomenal job. So if you do know one, thank them and appreciate what they are doing. I see this on a side note, and my wife tells me periodically I do a little bit TMI, too much information. My wife is a physician. She's been dealing with numerous COVID patients at the hospital when she's on her 1 week on, 1 week off shift. The stress that she has and having to gown and ungown and worry about the infections and taking care of the patients, dealing with loved ones that can't come in appropriately to the hospital, communicating them by phone, holding up a iPhone for a FaceTime with the patients. The separation of a patient from their loved ones is stressful not only for the patient and their family members, but it is stressful for the healthcare workers. And they are, again, doing a phenomenal job. I'm in one of those at-risk populations. I don't consider myself old, but numerically I hit a number that puts me there, and I have high blood pressure. So when I go home, maybe about every other weekend when I get out of Columbia, I stay at this is my TMI, I stay at a neighbor's garage apartment. My wife and my daughter, who's home from Colorado, do not want me to be exposed. And so we take it serious. It is something very serious. So there's stress at home. And then a side note, my daughter is the Chief of Staff for the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee. She has her own stress right now. But local and national data shows that the elderly as well as African Americans are disproportionately impacted by this disease. A couple of slides just to show. It is not a disease that only impacts from a getting diagnosed or testing positive. You can look at the first graph. It goes across the age groups. We have 10 bands, 10 by 10 by 10 on that with the reported 4,608 cases. These slides get updated every couple of days, so the numbers will be off. But the deaths, if you look at the deaths at a point in time, it is heavily weighted to the elderly. It is heavily weighted to those with comorbidities, high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, that at-risk population. If you look at the race diagnosis statistics, 47% of those cases are in the white, 42% in the Black African American community. But you look at the last slide pie chart, a disproportionate number of those that die are in the African American area. That is something that DHEC is reaching out and trying to initiate more and more efforts to go out. Dr. Bell's not here. She's out talking, communicating to that population that's at risk. We are looking to partner with other agencies, particularly in the underserved rural South Carolina areas where testing is a challenge. And many of our fellow healthcare institutions are looking to partner with us and taking their own initiatives to take that effort to have a more equal distribution of tests. Run chart across the way, the next page of the number of tests positives by day, and then that little red line is the cumulative over the time. And again, I refer you to a lot more, and particularly the models that forecast out at scdhec.gov/COVID-19. So we continue to be very active in our response, conducting investigations of suspect and confirmed cases, again, working with public and private partners to communicate on prevention messaging. I think we have over 100 billboards. We have television spots, radio PSAs, advertising, communicating on Hulu, all the different streaming networks. Again, trying to help people understand the importance of some of the core factors that will help keep them safe. There are women's, infant, and children's services. We've gone to 100% over the phone, so individuals don't have to come to the public health office to renew their card to get additional things. As supplies are more and more harder to find, we've restricted, you may not know, but they have to buy certain size milk, orange juice, cereals. We've reduced that, working with our providers to expand the number of options for the WIC, the Women's, Infant, and Children's Program. We are pushing out a lot of public health data. We're providing sneeze guards to restaurants and the DMV, and we're, again, focusing on testing the capacity in rural and at-risk communities. The last couple of slides are frameworks that we take from ASTO, which is the Association of State and Territorial Health Officers, provides us with a lot of information. And I just hit this looking at our focus for AccelerateSC is how do we protect the health and safety of workers in critical industries? How do we protect the health and safety of those living and working in high-risk facilities? How do we protect employees and users of mass transit? Monitoring conditions and immediately responding to increases in transmission rates. Focusing on social distancing and face coverings. Continuing on, protecting at-risk individuals as those experiencing homelessness and racial and ethnic minorities. Protecting employees and customers of non-essential business and public services. I would say every business has, to some degree, it's essential. It's essential for us to help protect them, to help communicate them, and for us to be successful in accelerating South Carolina to getting back to our norm or our new norm. We have to focus on those individuals, particularly the travelers, visitors, and employees in the hospitality and tourism. And then the last two slides are something that provides us with a framework as we will continue our discussions in our group about protecting Accelerate South Carolina. How do we initiate, how do we mobilize our resources across the state to opening up America again? And I just gave the 10 key factors that are identified in that plan. And just an honor to be part of the DHEC team, 3,500 employees that are focused on. And one of the most amazing things that I've learned in my 16 months at being at DHEC is how much we touch everything in South Carolina. And it is an amazing agency. but it's an amazing state, and we are privileged and honored to be part of this team and to be privileged and honored to focus our efforts to make it safe to be out and about. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rick. Social distancing doesn't mean we can't clap. That's like the fourth one I've tried on y'all, and it hadn't worked. Thank you, Lou Kennedy. Thank you for leading. I'm going to call on Director Marcia Adams. One of the, in our source documents here, there are 5 components to Accelerate South Carolina. One of them is an information component. Marcia's going to give us a brief update. The governor, ever since we worked together on ethics reform back many years ago, one of the things he had mentioned was talking about an information portal to help our citizens to navigate the many different agencies and questions and those kind of things. And so this was one of his challenges to us and to Marcia, was the information component of AccelerateSC.
Thank you, James, and good afternoon. And I'm excited to be here. I'm the director of the Department of Administration and excited that the governor has trusted us in this initiative. In fact, this information initiative is the governor's own idea. It's a one-stop shop portal, an ombudsman-style portal for information about COVID and resources related to COVID. And we just heard today from a few folks about people being home, social distancing. It's a new world. It's scary. We've heard about people whose jobs maybe have been lost, especially in the tourism industry. We've heard about people who are sick, who are maybe taking care of loved ones, who need resources from the state. They need to know that their government is here, that those resources are available, and how to get them. And that's what this idea is connecting individuals, connecting the people of this state to the information they need, whether it be about how to apply for unemployment, what are we doing to restart business, or just understanding what their government is doing. So that's what we want to do with this initiative. We want to make it easy for those citizens to connect to us. We also want to provide transparency. We want them to be able to know what this group is doing. How are we spending the money? What difference does that make in their lives? Because it certainly does. So that's the objective of this, that one-stop shop where they can find this information. So how are we going to do it? Well, first we're going to deploy a website that's just devoted to AccelerateSC, to the things I've just talked about. We're going to include the social media pages. We're going to include emails. We're going to include a call center and calls. We're going to communicate with everyone in this state in the way they can best receive the information. Some that is through technology, some that's by phone, some that's by paper or TV. But we're going to get the message out so that they know how to connect back to their government. We're going to engage with our partners to help us do this. And there's another very important thing that we need all of you to help us with. First, agencies. We're not going to replace the agencies in the communications. You've heard of the great things, for example, on the DHEC website, but we're going to make it easier for those people to find that. Imagine if you are a citizen or elderly adult and you have to determine what agency or what phone number to call to get services. We're going to make it easy for them. We're going to connect them to where they need to go to get those services. And the second important piece is going to come from each one of you and your groups. As you work through your information and your tasks, we want to be able to highlight that. We want to be able to show the public what's being done to revitalize this economy, to get us back to that new normal, whatever that new normal may be, and we want to have feedback from them that we can give you and how to better assist them also. So as you do this information group or this agency with our partners will be looking for your assistance to make sure that that information is out there available and the process is transparent. So I really appreciate your time today and look forward to working with each one of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. We're going to move on to Director Brian Gaines with the Executive Budget Office to talk briefly with us about some of the things that I think we've seen with what they've done in Washington with the CARES Act and some of the support that has been sent to the states. This is obviously very, very detailed information, and I think those of you who are on the resources component group will find that there are many different avenues out there, many different sources from which our state can draw, and so we'll turn it over to Director Brian Gaines.
Good afternoon. Delighted to be here. Thank you, Governor and Lieutenant Governor, for pulling this group together. As has been mentioned, my name is Brian Gaines. I serve as the Director of the Executive Budget Office within the Department of Administration. Today, I will be providing you all with a high-level overview of the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, better known or most commonly known as the CARES Act. The Act was signed into law on March 27, 2020 by President Trump. It provides over $2 trillion of direct aid to state and local governments, workers, families, small businesses, as well as other sectors of our nation's economy. And one of the most important things it's geared at doing is preserving the jobs of American workers. There are four big pots in which we're going to talk about today: the Coronavirus Relief Fund, the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund, the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, and the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund. The CRF, or Coronavirus Relief Fund, provides over $100 billion in direct aid to state and local governments. Each state receives a $1.25 billion minimum, plus an enhancement based on their state's population. Based on South Carolina's population, we are slated to receive $1.996 billion. Local governments with a population of 500,000 or more can apply directly to the federal government for their appropriation. There's only one entity in South Carolina, that's Greenville County, that meets that qualification, with their direct appropriated amount being $91 million. The CRF provides three basic criteria for use of the funds. All expenditures must be necessary and incurred due to the public health emergency known as COVID-19, were not accounted for in the most recently appropriated Appropriations Act of that entity, and those funds or those expenditures must be incurred between March 1st and December 30, 2020. These funds are appropriated at the governor's discretion. Initial guidance indicates that these funds may only be used to reimburse state and local governments for their COVID-19 related expenditures, and funds may not be used for any revenue shortfalls. I'll pause there because we got additional guidance last night. The feds are being very responsive to the needs of the state. I serve as a member of an association called NASPO, which is the National Association of State Budget Officers, comprised of all the state budget directors from every state across our nation. And we've been providing lots of information and feedback to the federal government through NASPO on what are some of the needs and things that the state has. And so the feds have been very responsive to some of those things, and so they're continuing to roll out expanded guidance for what these funds can be used for. So as late as last night, we got information that says these funds may now be used to fund things like public hospitals and clinics, testing supplies, medical response and transport, expanding any telemedicine programs states may have, providing payroll assistance to public safety, public health, as well as healthcare employees, providing compliance-related expenses like food delivery programs, technology improvements to expand distance learning, and providing sanitation and social distancing measures at our jails and prisons. In addition, interesting, last night we also found out that it also would allow the state to supplement its state unemployment trust fund, as well as provide grants to some small businesses. So as you can tell, there's a lot included in this particular program, and as guidance continues to come out, hopefully more funds will be available for more uses for our needs. Next slide. Actions to date. As of April 15th, we submitted our application to U.S. Treasury. 24 hours later, I've never seen the federal government move this fast, but we got our first deposit of $998 million. We're expecting our second deposit by tomorrow, which is the second $998 million. And these funds are currently being held by the Department of Administration until they're ready for disbursement at the governor's discretion. The next pot we'll talk about is the Governor's Education Relief Fund. This consists of $2.95 billion to all of the governors across the country to provide emergency support through grants to our local educational agencies as well as our higher education institutions. Again, grants are awarded at the governor's discretion, and South Carolina's component share of that is about $48 million, and that application is currently underway. The next pot we will discuss will be the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. That consists of $13 billion to state educational agencies to cover expenses associated with COVID-19. Those grants are awarded at the discretion of the state superintendent of education, and South Carolina will receive $216 million. And as I understand it, and I'm sure the superintendent will talk about it shortly, but that application is also currently underway. Next being help for our higher education institutions. It's $13 billion to institutions to cover the costs of changes in instructional delivery related to COVID-19. 50% of those funds must be used to provide emergency financial aid to students for things like food, housing, course materials, technology, child care, and health care. And the institutions in South Carolina collectively will receive about $185 million, and those grants are made directly to each individual institution. Next slide. There are several other sources of assistance included in this act. It's about 900 pages and over 70 different fund sources. So I've highlighted a couple here to kind of give you an idea of some of the things that are in there. There's state and local law enforcement grants. That's $14.5 million to support our law enforcement community. Child Care Development Block Grant at DSS, $63 million. That provides assistance to our child care providers as well as child care assistance for our direct first responders and hospital employees. There's a traditional FEMA disaster relief fund, about $45 billion that will be available. Healthcare provider reimbursements totaling $100 billion. That is direct appropriations to providers who are providing testing and other medical treatment to folks that are dealing with COVID-19. And the Agricultural Producer Support Fund, about $9.5 billion, that is providing assistance to folks that are producing our products, our agriculture, our farm, and things like that. So as you can see, it's a lot of things that are included in here. But what's most important, and I want this group to make sure they take note of, that it's going to take a significant amount of coordination to ensure that we're maximizing all of these different pots of money to the greatest benefit for the needs of South Carolina. So with that, I thank you all, and that concludes my presentation.
We've asked our great superintendent of education, Ms. Molly Spearman, who has been at the governor's side at many press conferences and has faced many challenges in educating our young people. So we've asked her to give you all an idea, and I'm sure everybody heard yesterday about the decision they made. I'll turn it over to the superintendent.
Thank you, James. Good afternoon, Governor. We've talked every day for 6 weeks or so now, haven't we? We've spent a lot of time together, and I told the governor I really appreciate the way he has allowed me and district superintendents, educators to be involved in his decisions, and he's done a great job, and I appreciate his leadership. I wonder if any of you are helping us as teachers, as parents or grandparents now. Thank you, Akil. Anybody else? Thank you. If anything, we've learned to appreciate our teachers even more, haven't we? It's been quite extraordinary. This morning, I'll give you some good news and some not so good news. This morning, I participated in the 3rd annual Boeing Signing Day with high school students. The governor had a message. We have about 2 per county, 100 outstanding high school seniors who, through a Zoom meeting, each told about what they want to do and where they're planning on going to technical school. They're graduating with some type of STEM certification, Akil, and it was very inspiring. I had a message planned for them, and I changed it because I listened, and then I just repeated some of the things that they said. Their goal is to go out and to find challenges and to find a way to solve those problems with limited resources. And that's pretty inspiring to hear from high school kids. Their goal is to give back to their community and to make the world a better place. They're proud of the way that they have learned to persevere and that the determination that they have. So I think, if anything, the lemonade in all of this is that we will come out stronger people, and that we've got a great group of young people whose senior years have been kind of destroyed, whose children are crying because they want to go back to school. And it's taught us just how important our education system is. So I appreciate all of you as business leaders of this state realizing that one of the great challenges that we have now in South Carolina is to get our public system back on track. We've done the best we can, and it's been a pretty darn good job. But it's not like having children in the classroom. So I want to share some things with you very quickly to let you understand the challenge we have and the areas that I really need your advice and assistance on. As you know, we have 79 traditional school districts in the state with 2 charter school authorizers. We serve about 780,000 children in our public school system, about 70,000 in our private, independent, and parochial system. There are 180 days in the traditional school year for students. The teachers work an additional 10 days. Depending on our school calendars, our public school students have missed anywhere from 45 to 50 days of their instruction this year, which is about 30% of the school year. That's a lot. But we called for emergency plans. We had 15 districts in the state that were already set up with what we call the e-learning pilot project. We've been working on this for a couple of years, and they were very well prepared to go e-learning for inclement weather, a day or two of snow. They never dreamed that it would be for 12 weeks of the school year, but they were pretty well equipped. We added an additional 4 districts to that group. You can see about 220,000 or 30% of our student population has been served by some type of e-learning where they took a device home, really haven't missed a beat because teachers have been able to communicate with them through technology and have been able to instruct with new instructions. So that's probably the most doable and the most successful of our systems that we're using. We had 17 of our school districts that could only do paper packets. They actually ran material off, sent it home, and they do that in 2 weeks' supplies. They collect it, look it over, grade it. There's been, I'll confess, there's been different levels of how they've looked at that work and used it. But we have 65,000 kids who are being served right now, or about 8%. Typically, those are going to be the students that we're going to be most concerned about, and I'll tell you why on the next slide or two. We have 45 districts, about 500,000 of our students are getting a blended approach, some technology, some pencil and paper, and so that's about 60% of our students. On the next slide, you'll see that most of our students have done very well. Now, how do I know that? I don't know it statistically, I just know it by what teachers are telling us, and through a telephone poll that we did a few weeks ago with about 4,000 teachers. There's some information coming out at about 4 o'clock, I think, that will back that up, another poll that's been done. But teachers are saying about 80% they think it's going really well and that students are participating and they're communicating with the families. But we know that our students in poverty, and those would be those who probably just had the pencil and paper, are struggling. They're doing the best they can, and depending on their family situation, some are doing better than others. There are a few that we have not heard from, and that's probably about 4 or 5% of students that we've had no communication with them. And that's very troubling, not just by education-wise, but it's troubling emotionally, socially, and our friends at DSS are very concerned, as we are, because their numbers of child abuse reports have gone down tremendously. Our teachers are their eyes and ears. So there's been a lot going on with stress in families that has not been able to be reported nor supported. There's an issue called summer slide, and that's something we deal with in South Carolina all the time because about 62% of our student population lives in poverty. Did you know that? 62% of our students now. That's the poverty index that we use, SNAP, free and reduced lunch, all the different criteria. So we worry about those children anyway. And had it been a normal year, they probably would have finished a little behind. And then we know that because they were going to be out of school for 3 months, that they were going to probably summer slide, lose 3 to 4 months of the learning that they had done during the school year. So put that slide on top of the fact that they've been out of school 30% this year, and then add that to what's going to happen in August, we got a problem. And it's a major problem, and I need your help. Our teachers are out there, we're working, and they're being creative. But we know there's nothing like that face-to-face relationship with a teacher and a child, and how can we get back in school in August and make that happen and do it safely? So it is a goal for us. Now, I know we don't know yet whether we'll be back. We want to be prepared one way or the other. Face-to-face would be ideal, but my dream would be that we could have 100% of our students in South Carolina have a really strong technological direct learning through e-learning. So we got some work to do. And we really won't know the impact. I'm going to tell you that probably most of your children and grandchildren, they're going to be just fine. They're going to be just fine. In fact, with your support, you have them so ready for us, they're going to be just fine. But there are some children in South Carolina, a lot of children in South Carolina that don't have your education background as parents, nor the resources that you can support. So those are our top priority, and I kind of lose a little sleep over that at night. On April the 1st, I held a town hall meeting. There were about 4,000 teachers on the line, and they were asked a couple questions during the phone call for us to get an idea of how things were going. What's your experience been in remote learning? And you'll see their answers there. About 34% of them said, I got everything I need. 50% of them said, I got what I need. 14 said, I like a little bit. 4%, I don't have any resources at all to lead distance learning. On the second question, with what portion of students have you communicated with over the last, at that time it's about 4 weeks we have been out, all of my students. I've talked to every single one of them in a Zoom meeting, 17%. 44%, 75 to 99% of my students, I've seen them. I know how they're doing. But look at those last numbers. 50%, about 19% said 50% or more, but 21% said less than 25 or less than half of my students, and 9% said less, and there was about 2% there that said I haven't heard from any of there's students that I have not heard from. What concerns do teachers have? And they're the same. I'm an old teacher, so here's how I feel too. I'm worried about their learning right now, and you've heard me say this to parents. I'm really concerned about their learning, but that's really not my top priority right now. It's their emotional stability. And our friends at Mental Health are here. I'm really concerned about this. We've got students, and we've got families, governors, you know, in the state where children have not only not have their school to go to, they've lost their homes in the last couple of weeks through tornadoes. There's been a tremendous amount of trauma. Mom and dad have lost their job. They're fussing, they're upset, they're at home. So I need your help. How do we meet this tremendous emotional trauma that our children and families have gone through in South Carolina? How do we address that? And how do we support them when they come back? We really need to think about it, and we're meeting with mental health and DSS, but I really think when children, we do get a chance to sit down with them, we've got to have some conversations with them and have some real support. When we do come back to school, we've got to spend some time on this. How did you do? How are you feeling? And really work with them, because we can't teach them if they've got that really emotional issues going on. So it's kind of overwhelming, so I'm glad you're here to support me. But that's how teachers feel. They're worried about instruction, but they're really worried about their students. Now, here's the really good news, and I think the instructional piece has been good news too. The teachers have done a fabulous job in about, as you see the numbers, most of them think it's going really well, and I hear really good compliments from families, from teachers, from students, grandmas saying, I'm amazed. And I've heard some really good compliments about South Carolina as compared to other states, that we really have done a great job. Here's one that we really have, it's amazing. The governor announced about 5 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon that we were not going to be going back to school. 2 districts knew it on Friday, the rest of them found out on Sunday, and on Monday they were serving meals, and not just preparing the meals, but they were delivering the meals to the houses. And since that time, we're over 5 million meals that have been prepared and delivered in the hands of these students all across the state. There have been a few little glitches, but overall it has gone extraordinarily well. I need your help in keeping that going. And one of the biggest things is keeping the personnel well and having protective equipment. We don't have that now. We really don't. We've got some for bus drivers. We got some gloves for cafeteria workers, but we are going to need a tremendous amount of PPE when school starts back, and to keep the food service going. The governor's real concerned about this and wants to keep it going through the summer. We've always run a summer feeding program. We feed about 1 million meals over the whole summer. You can imagine we got to really escalate that for this summer. We have 1,600 school buses that are being used to pick up meals. The National Guard's helping us. We had to close down Horry County due to some cafeteria workers being sick and bus drivers being ill. So Operation Barbecue and the National Guard has come to our rescue. We signed a contract this morning, and we'll be up and running and serving 9,000 meals a day in Horry starting on Monday. Here's the biggest challenges, and I want you to know I'm bringing together a very technical group of educators and folks to work on how we can make this all happen. We'd like an opportunity to come and share those recommendations with you when we get it, hopefully in the next week or two. But here's some things that y'all can help us with. The biggest thing that has become so apparent is the digital divide. And this is a map here that Jim Stritzinger has allowed me to use in my presentation today. It shows the gaps across South Carolina. Those white areas mean absolutely nobody lives there. And then in the light, it's areas where there's no service. And he can break that down for us county by county now. He's working on, many of you know him, he's great, done some fantastic work, not just on the broadband coverage, which this shows, but also cell service coverage. We've got places in Lower Richland, less than 10 miles from here, where folks don't have broadband. And so it's not just Allendale. It's not just northern Saluda County where I live. It's all over. So I need your help. This is out of my realm. We don't have all the money to do this, but the creative minds in this room, I think we can make this happen, and I really need your help if we're going to be able to offer digital learning to all students in South Carolina, and not just learning, but telehealth, telemental health, where we're giving psychiatric sessions with students at their homes if they've got the technology. So I really need your guidance and help on that. We got to bridge this gap. So the financial support and logistics to accomplish that. On the next slide, here are the other challenges I'd like, and this is our last slide, not in any particular order because they're all important. You got to feed the body before you can feed the brain and the soul. So I talked about food first. We want to be able to keep that food service going. We need the personal protection equipment, and we may need some nonprofit support while we get our food through the USDA. There are some times when we may need a little extra support there to keep that going, so some nonprofit support there. Second, I've already talked about the social and emotional well-being. How are we going to address that? How are we going to counsel these families and give support? And finally, reopening school. It's very overwhelming, but I believe we've got the creative minds. There's no way, I believe, unless there's just a miracle, that we can bring back children to the same type of setting that we've always had. Because, as I told the governor, we put 78 people on a school bus, 3 children to a seat. a classroom is 800 square feet with about 25 kids in a classroom. So we're going to have to think about dividing the days, doing some kind of alternative. You come this day, we spread out, maybe the high school student, maybe we use their building. I don't know, but I'm bringing together some creative minds who are already thinking about how could we have face-to-face instruction with using social distancing in our schools. Our schools aren't big enough right now to handle everybody at the same time, so we've got to come up with some things there, and we're going to need an awful lot of protection equipment to make that happen, and we're going to probably have to have some legislative changes on some regulations that are in place now, but the governor's been wonderful about helping us with that, as has the legislature. So that completes my report. Thank you very much for letting me be a part of this.
The governor's given me some latitude to be able to, I'm going to call an audible really quick before Dan Elsie comes back. I did not think that I was going to be able to get Commissioner Hugh Weathers here today. He'd been out of town on business, and so I begged his indulgence, and I say, Commissioner, could you give us a brief report on agriculture, because it's such a huge part of our industry here in South Carolina. So Commissioner Weathers, I hope you don't mind me calling the audible.
No, that's fine, and I'll tell you what, in the spirit of accelerating, I'll just speak from here and accelerate our schedule. How about that? And I don't have presentation. Thank you, James. Thank you, Governor. And I do think it's critical that you hear some of the things about agriculture, and more specifically about our food supply. One thing to know that, agriculture is a team member of the South Carolina economy, one of our largest, like tourism, manufacturing, and others, and especially in our rural counties. But several points just want you to take home, and I don't have a presentation. We will distribute this, the highlights of this, to all of the task force members. Your food supply is safe. No evidence of the COVID-19 coronavirus spread by food or any of that. Food safety has not stopped at all during this virus. Our folks have been out on the front line with food manufacturing. But nevertheless, there are some issues that we are concerned about. Obviously, I won't get ahead of Bobby Williams, who will talk about the restaurant impact. That's quite well known to all of us. Some of the things that you've seen on national press reports, we don't want to have happen in South Carolina. Perhaps you've seen Florida farmers plowing under their produce. Perhaps you've seen dairy farmers around the country pouring out milk. You probably have heard of food manufacturing processing plants impacted by the virus and closing down in several of our Midwestern states with pork processing. The point is this: working with this task force, we don't want those things to happen in South Carolina, so that our food supply is not interrupted. As we are learning by staying at home, like Bobby said, we get comfortable at home. I think we will learn that our consumers are more comfortable buying their food from as nearby as possible. We do not grow avocados and bananas in South Carolina, but we grow a whole host of things that as we come out of this crisis, that I think the consuming public of South Carolina will support agriculture by way of retail outlets, by way of the farmers markets, especially by way of our restaurants, in helping them adjust to the new normal. We have done some research already, and it is concerning about the support that will be forthcoming for the restaurants, so we want to work with them. We've already begun conference calls with farmers to talk about the economic help, the financial help that will be forthcoming from Washington. We want to do that same effort regarding the entire food supply chain. The industry that feeds us all is a very efficiently run one. It has had to adapt during the time of this of the crisis, of their marketing efforts. We can adapt further, but we want to especially emphasize South Carolina, the production of food, the processing, the distribution, and the consumption. How do we tell the South Carolina consumer that that food is safe, that our restaurants and retailers are practicing the protocols that are necessary so that they feel comfortable in resuming what will be a new normal. So we are focused on how we move forward. Some of the things that our folks have already done in the department, we'll give you this in a handout distribution, but we put up a website that says coronavirus/local with over 100 places where you can purchase food either from some of our wholesalers that are not selling to our restaurants. You can go there, to our farmers markets that are opening up early and practicing the social distancing protocols. But these things of this nature so that we can have the public aware that the food supply from South Carolina has always been safe, will continue to be safe, and we do need their support in helping this industry regain its footing once it's over. So again, I'll help distribute that to the members so that you can have a better working knowledge of South Carolina food supply and agriculture. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Before Director Elsie, before Director Elsie comes up, and thank you for again letting me call that audible and just call on you. I appreciate that. So we've run a little long, and that happens at times. So I think what we'd like to do is just take about a brief 3-minute break. There are restrooms back there. There are restrooms over this way, over that shoulder. I ask that 3 minutes. I'm going to call it back to order, and we're rolling. So we'll take that stretch break, and then we'll get back and get finished and move forward. Thanks. All right, I'm going to ask everybody if they could start getting back to their seats. And as people are returning to their seats, I'm going to real quick. I'm going to make a quick programming note. Thank you for leading the way, Lieutenant Governor, and getting to your seat. I appreciate that. All right. One quick programming note, and I know we've gone a little long, and I beg your indulgence that I want to try to get us done within 30 minutes because I know everybody's got schedules, and so we've run a tad over. So we're going to go ahead and get started. For those of our members of AccelerateSC that are speaking, again, I would just ask you to be mindful of the time. There are going to be opportunities again for everybody here as you're working in your component subgroups to be able to speak and talk about various issues. But I do want to bring on Director Dan Elsey from the Department of Employment and Workforce because, again, this is such a crucial part of our economy. And then we'll close it out from the state agency perspective from Dr. Ken Rogers of the Department of Mental Health. So, Dan, I'll let you go. And we may go through some slides quickly, so they're in your book. So I'll just ask you to just follow along, if you would. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. As James said, I'm Dan Elsey, Director of the Department of Employment and Workforce. If you don't know our agency, we do 4 things. We do workforce development, that's training, run the federal program on that. We do employment services, help people find jobs, federal program. We do both of those in the SC work centers that you see all around the state of South Carolina. We have a labor market information section, and lastly and most importantly for today, we handle the unemployment claims for the state of South Carolina. I took this job on May 1st of last year, and when I did, we were handling 2,000 initial claims per week, 2,000 initial claims per week. Number of employed people was going up every month and setting a record, 2.3 million people, and getting better every day. Number of unemployed people at a historic low, 2.3% at one time. The biggest problem I had in my job for the first 10 months was helping employers find employees. And I've talked with some of you in here yourselves about the problems you were having finding employees. Well, folks, when March 15 rolled around, everything changed. We went from filing 2,000 claims per week, initial claims, to the next week 34,000, 64,000, 86,000, 88,000, and last week down to 73,000. So we're averaging just a little bit over 70,000 claims being filed each week as compared to 2,000 per week just 5 weeks ago. Were we ready for this? Well, we thought we were. We had an economic task force within our agency using an economist to study the 2008 and 9 recession and lay out for us a staged plan for how much we had to hire as unemployment went up. So we knew exactly where we had to be at certain points. About 12 days into this pandemic, the report was worthless. We had already blown the top out of everything we'd ever seen. To put it in perspective, 2008 and 9, it was 10,000 claims per week. Now we're at 70,000 claims per week. So how'd we do? Well, in terms of taking the claims, pretty well. We can get claims filed through the computers. We're completely modernized. One of not all the states are. Many of them were not modernized, like Florida, which has completely failed, and they're now gone to paper applications. We can handle that part of it. The part we weren't prepared for were the employees who had problems, who got on the phone to get answers, and because of the onslaught of callers, they couldn't get through. And I'll talk about that in a few minutes. If we go to the next slides, one of the things we looked at in thinking about the future, because we know when this thing turns around, the pressure is going to go from paying unemployment benefits to getting people training and getting them employed. And it's going to be the same pressure pushing in that direction as it is now pushing in the other direction. So we looked by industry in the state of South Carolina as to who's really affected, and it comes at no surprise, accommodation and food service. 28% of the initial claims are filed by those employees, while they represent only 11.2% of the workforce. So we know some of the issues we're going to face in certain industries. We also looked at it geographically. And some of these geographically by county will not be a surprise to you. We can go to the next slide. You can see the big counties are represented there, as you would expect. But if you look at it on a percentage of their workforce basis, you'll see some counties jump in there, Cherokee, Union, and Beaufort, that you might not have expected. So geographically, we know where a lot of our problems are going to be as things turn around. Next slide talks about the trust fund. That's what we pay unemployment money with. Our agency is almost 100% federally funded, but the unemployment benefits paid to employees are paid by employers in the state of South Carolina. In mid-March, we had $1.1 billion in the trust fund. We were only one of 31 states that were fully funded according to the formula the Department of Labor put out. We now have $980 million in the trust fund. Sounds like a lot of money, but we're going to be paying out over $70 million per week for the next, I don't know how many weeks. You can do the math, and you can see at some point we're going to run out of money. 2 states, California and Illinois, have already raised their hand and said they're going to need loans. My guess is every state. Some of the states were only funded at 50%. We were funded a little bit better than 100%. There's no doubt we will be looking out at some point and discussing funding as well. In addition to the unemployment, you see a new program a lot of you have heard about. Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation, that's the $600 a week, which is a lot of money, and it was well received by our employees, but it's going to have, you've heard of the law of unintended consequences. Well, it's having a unintended consequence, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Next slide, we'll talk about have we peaked. It looks like we've peaked in initial claims, but remember, we pay on continuing claims. So the fact that initial claims start dropping, we've still got all those people who filed, many of whom may stay on the rolls for up to the maximum of 20 weeks under our state law. The next slide talks about a new program, totally new, different from the $600. Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program. This is basically an unemployment program for people who don't qualify for regular unemployment. It's people who are not employees, self-employed, barbers, gig workers, somebody who was monetarily ineligible, didn't earn enough money where they worked before they got laid off. All those people we lumped into a different group, and they will be able to apply for this program. This is a federal program. The money will not come out of our trust fund. We will be going live on it by the 25th of this month, so you can see it's going to be within the next 2 days. But an awful lot more money is going to start going out the door when that program is activated. Those people will also get the $600 per week in addition to the unemployment benefits that they get. Challenges, what are the challenges that we face? Well, one of them is what we call recall resistance, and you see my example there. Employee earns $15 an hour, that's $600 a week. He's laid off, and now he's drawing unemployment benefits of about $600 a week, and he's getting a $600 supplement to add up to $900 a week. Now, so when I call John and say, John, come on back to work, John's going to say, well, why don't you ask Jim? I'd like to stay out for a while. So we're going to have issues with that. Employers are already addressing it. The law is crystal clear. We've got it on our website. We've got forms for you to use. If you make an offer of recall and someone refuses it, you should notify us. We will investigate why I did it. If you didn't have a good reason, we will stop it. That's the law in South Carolina. The forms to notify them on this when you offer the recall, as I say, are on the website. Just fill it out, send it to us, and we will take over from there. Legal liability. We have been discussing in our office what happens when we send people out into a federal training program. We send them to a contractor who maybe is teaching truck driving or welding. The employee contracts the disease. The employee takes it home and his family gets it. Somebody dies. We get sued. Who's got the liability? We don't know, but we do know one thing. That's going to be a stopping point for a lot of people, and it's something that we're trying to address from an agency standpoint, and something I think the state's going to have to address from a policy standpoint. Call center issues I've already mentioned. We've tried everything we can to resolve the problem. We went from 49 highly trained, well-qualified call center operators to now we're over 450. They're not all well qualified. They're not all well trained. They're not all experienced, and they can't answer a lot of the questions people have. We have got experts working with us, people who know call centers as well as anybody in America, trying to make ours more efficient, trying to train our employees, and try to be able to answer the questions people have when they call in with an issue. We're not there yet. We're still getting so many calls, you wouldn't believe it. We've got websites. We're putting out information, social media, everywhere we can, but we still get the calls. Rural broadband, we know that when we go back up, it's going to be a different world, and we're going to be doing a lot of our stuff virtually over computers. We were looking at that before this started. We know we're going to be doing more of it afterwards. And the question is, once again, what's the impact on some of the rural areas and other areas that really do not have access to broadband? It's going to be a major issue for us. It has been an issue for us, and it's going to be a major issue for the state. If you go to the next slide, one of the things we looked at in gearing up for our reemployment issues is how many people are we really talking about? Well, the bad news is there are hundreds of thousands out there who have been laid off. The good news is that 78% of those people are what we call job attached, meaning they've got a return to work date. So we can look at the 22% who do not, and those are the ones who are going to really need the help, both in training and in sourcing a job for them. The question for us is how to do it best and most quickly. Virtual is certainly one of the main answers, but once again, it takes us back to the people who really don't have access to it. The rest of my report you can read there. Most of it focuses on virtual platforms that we are putting in and that sort of thing. We operate the SC Work Centers under the State Workforce Development Board, which is under the governor. Chairman Don Tomlin, appointed by the governor, has been a big proponent for virtual access as it has been in the past. We are pursuing that. There are 12 local workforce development boards under him, under the board, and all of them at this point are developing redeployment or re-employment plans. So that's it. We're doing what we can. Hopefully things will continue getting better. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Next, I think one of our goals, I think that the governor would like us to do is to help make things easier on Dan's agency so that we can get folks back to work and quickly. And so now I'll call on Dr. Ken Rogers from the Department of Mental Health. He's going to give us a brief, brief report on some of the mental health challenges that we're facing because of the various issues surrounding COVID-19.
All right. Thanks, James. Thanks, Governor, for having me here today. Kenneth Rogers, State Director of the Department of Psychiatry for the Department of Mental Health for the past 3 weeks now. There's nothing like taking over a health-serving agency in the midst of a pandemic. Just want to spend a little time today talking about mainly our outpatient services, but we'll also talk about a little bit of our inpatient services as well. When we look at the State Department of Mental Health, we have 16 mental health centers that are spread throughout the state of South Carolina. There are also 3 state hospitals in the state. But one of the things you may not know is we also serve veterans nursing homes. We have 3 veterans nursing homes and 2 more that will come on board in the summer of 2021. We serve about 100,000 patients per year, and about 30% of those, so about 30,000, are children and adolescents. One of the things that we're really blessed here in South Carolina with is that we have really a state-run mental health system. We're only one of 3 states in the United States that are that way. So of those 16 mental health centers, we actually have a local center in all 46 counties by having main centers and satellites. That served us well because in the midst of a pandemic, it's allowed us to really reach the entire state fairly easily. We provide services by telehealth, meaning you have video and audio. We have served some folks by just telephone calls that were established folks in our centers. But for new and emergent cases, new folks that are coming in, people that have been identified, we're also able to see them in real time in our centers as well. South Carolina Department of Mental Health is actually one of the largest telepsychiatry providers in the entire United States, and definitely the biggest in South Carolina. And when you look at telehealth, looking at all specialties, along with MUSC, we're also the largest provider of telehealth in South Carolina as well. That's actually served us well, too, because what we've done now is moved more of our counseling services online so that we can actually see people in their homes, in centers, and in places that are easy to reach so you don't have to actually travel to come into a mental health center. Our school mental health program is something that we're very, very proud of in South Carolina. We're actually the largest school mental health program in the United States at this point. Prior to COVID, we were in 800 of our schools throughout the state. We serve about 18,000 kids each year. And so it's a very robust program that's allowed us to keep continuing to see people and actually shift that to family work as we have moved along. Now, in terms of thinking about where we're headed moving into the future, one of the things that begins to happen, especially with the pandemic, is understandably you're going to have anxiety, fear, stress, and all the things that you would expect, things that are perfectly normal. But the problem becomes in how do you handle that? Is it something that's maladaptive, or can you handle it in an adaptive way? So one of the things that we begin to see more of is alcohol and drug use, irritability, children acting out at home. One of our responses to that has actually been to develop an outreach number, which is called Project Hope. And so that is a number that anyone in South Carolina could call, and we will actually provide assistance over the phone and direct them into the appropriate services, whether it's mental health, whether it's substance abuse services, can be a one-stop shop number for everything that's happening. The other thing is we think about revitalization and where we're headed to in the future. It's really important for employers to think about what are folks going to be like when they're coming back into the workforce. One of the things that will become critically important is the fact that people are coming out of a period of stress. They've been home for long periods of time. There are financial stressors, family stressors, just a number of things that have happened over these past several weeks. And so there's going to be a new norm in the workplace where there are going to be stressed employees and trying to figure out how do we actually provide those services that are needed. One of the things that will be incredibly important is to have employee assistance programs that are available to us. Also to have a way of accessing the health insurance programs that many employers supply. But for many individuals, the Department of Mental Health will be where they receive their services. And so we're preparing now to continue to be able to provide services both in person at our local centers, but also continuing to expand our telehealth services so that we'll be able to meet the increased demand that will occur over the course of the next several months. The other thing that we're really thinking about is the number of resources, and if we can go to the second to the last slide. We've put in a number of resources there that will be available to you that as you're kind of contemplating or running into people, there are contacts that are there. And then finally, the thing that we have done as an agency is to develop more public service outreach. So one of the things, there's a link here to a video that's actually being shared through SCETV and also some of our local affiliate networks that's really getting the message out about mental health and the availability of mental health services in our areas, how to recognize it and how to get people into services. We're also increasing our social media campaign, especially with Facebook. We're increasing our resources there as well so that people can easily access the available services that are actually numerous throughout our state. Thank you.
One of the things I've done is, and I've asked some of our members here on the task force to briefly just address some of the things they've seen. You can stay at your, we're going to do it from our table, Dr. Cole. Is that easy? Then we'll, like, massive social distance, like with everybody. But I'll just, when I call on you, just raise your hand so they can see you and they can turn your mic on. But I've asked Dr. Cole and then Dr. Carter after him will be ready to go, and then we'll move in succession to just provide some very, very brief remarks about what you're seeing.
So thank you, Governor, Lieutenant Governor, for the opportunity to serve on this committee. I'm a surgeon, so I'm pretty used to wearing masks for prolonged periods of time. It usually comes with a cool hat and scrubs. That's a big difference. Healthcare, just to understand, has had many, many roles as this COVID has come on us. To meet the needs of the community and hopefully not be overwhelmed, to not become New York City. You've seen all the visuals on that. And also to help flatten the curve. In so doing, that's led to empty hospitals. ORs have shut down, clinics have shut down, and it's led to a significant economic impact for the healthcare sector. And as a reason why, if you look on those graphs, healthcare is the number 2 behind tourism in terms of layoffs and duress. So we're all in the same boat. I would want to give a shout out, and I'd be wrong not to all the healthcare providers who are standing into the fray on a daily basis. In addition to that, all the scientists and educators are trying to innovate and find a path forward. There's a lot of really talented people working hard to make a difference. So I'm speaking now as a healthcare through the healthcare lens. So where are we? In my opinion, we just got to first base. What does that mean? We haven't become New York City. Social distancing and quarantine has been working, and we have to acknowledge that. The curves didn't just sort of magically get better. There's been a lot of people that are paying a price as we speak to help enable that. So we now have an opportunity to move forward. I would point out, however, like politics, infections are local. And if we allow a second wave to emerge from the actions of our businesses or our communities, it could cripple our efforts to move forward. If that happens, we will also lose further trust from our communities, which will make further future efforts even more difficult. Ironically, at the same time, you have to understand, as we start to loosen things, as we start to open up, there will be further COVID infections and there will be outbreaks. They will emerge as we start to relax our social distancing, as we start to move forward with the economy, so forth. So how do we move forward? The simplest way I can put it, when I talk to my team, we got to keep the car in the middle of the road, not drive it into a ditch. What's that mean specifically from a healthcare perspective? What are the parameters? That our health systems are able to meet the need, and that we have the monitoring and ability to act when we start seeing an inflection in infections that can lead to the next wave. We have to have both of those. Those are the guardrails as we move forward. What are the keys to this? What enables this? There's been a lot of reference to this. Staged, strategic revitalization of our economy. Decisions need to be made about the highest benefit with the lowest risk as we take first steps forward. I think it's also important to understand that we're dealing with the biology of COVID, but also the psychology of COVID. I've been in the hospital. I've been there almost every day. I see it. There's a lack of confidence. There's a fear. There's a concern. I don't believe that businesses can merely throw their doors open and say business as usual. We have to work to put the structures in place, to build the confidence, to move forward successfully. So what does that look like? I'm using the term business smart. It's a new normal. Businesses need to start defining at the local level what their new standard operating procedures are, what the staffing models look like, what the space utilization looks like, what the customer volume should be, and how they test appropriately. They're going to have to risk stratify those that they interface with and those that work for them. And additionally, if you have the ability to appropriately work at a distance at this time frame, I would encourage you to continue to do so. If it's not causing harm, don't bring people into the fray and add to the risk. The missing piece, the element that needs to be interfaced with this, is the ability to monitor and respond. Keeping the car in the middle of the road means that we have to be able to adjust based on leading indicators, which means we have to measure and know what's happening. We cannot be blind in the communities as we move forward. We have a lot of tests available. Diagnostic testing, you've heard a lot of the numbers that are coming on board. We now need to get serology testing in addition to that so we can understand the incidence in the communities and actually help provide better stratification as these tests mature. And contact tracing, that's a ground level capability to follow up on incidents that occur, infections that come about, and to mitigate that as the communities try to maintain their safety. So finally, timely reporting. We can't have 4 days later a test coming back. It's disabling. Understand that the leading indicators, the numbers that we get, represent 2 weeks ago. The way this infection occurs, whatever we see now in terms of new numbers happened 2 weeks ago. So any decisions we make now, we won't know for 2 weeks. And any action we take will not take impact for several weeks. Finally, I just need to emphasize, we need to protect those that are vulnerable and at risk and really focus on that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Cole. Dr. Carter, if you would go ahead and start, and then we'll Helen Hill, you'll be ready. You're in the batter's circle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Governor, for allowing us to come together and help chart the state's course forward. We're all deeply appreciative of that. I've been asked to briefly discuss some of higher education's experiences over the last 4 to 5 weeks, and maybe talk briefly about some of the challenges that we anticipate in the months ahead. In the aftermath of the declaration of emergency, I guess our first priority on the part of almost every university, college in the state was to clear the dormitories and residence halls. I think most of us did that within a matter of days. We did it fairly effectively, and we did it quickly. Almost every institution on campus still have, in the state, still have some students on campus, international students, some out-of-state students that resided in hot spots and couldn't go home, and some displaced students. The governor's directives gave us the latitude to do that, but I want all of you to know that every school is down now to a fraction of their dormitory population that we had 2 months ago. The second order of business was, of course, to move an entire curriculum online. Some schools were obligated to do that over the course of a weekend. Other schools had the benefit of a spring break week to accomplish that. It was a new experience for many faculty and students. There was a challenge in finding the right technology, the right methodology, synchronous versus asynchronous instruction, that is, online, interactive, or whether or not assignments would be made with delayed responses. And then there was the very, very critical problem of how do you replicate applied courses? How do you replicate clinical courses? How do you arrange for nursing and medical students to have their clinical rotations? The laboratories and practica for engineering and natural science students, the student teaching for education majors, and the applied programs for the technical colleges, mechatronics, welding, HVAC. Simulations software helped with some of this, but many of those issues are still being resolved, and I think they will continue to be worked on as we move forward. And please remember, all this came right in the middle of the semester. But of course, it had to be done. So there was no negotiating, there was no compromising, there were no lengthy deliberations. It had to be done, and it was done. And frankly, I believe that most of the presidents would agree with me that it was done fairly well. Now, I'll share with you an email from a senior professor I received last week. I'm staying a week ahead of my classes electronically, and I've never felt more proficient. So in the middle of even a crisis, there's a little good that comes out of it. Then there was the students' challenges, and Superintendent Spearman addressed some of these. Effective computers and software at home, the connectivity problem, which so plagues the state, and maybe in better times, Molly, with more money, it's something that we can all work on together to try to address. And let me also say this. There was a problem within the household. So you had college students and K through 12 students and maybe one or more parents who were telecommuting, all sharing time on the computer and sharing bandwidth with each other, and probably arguing about it every evening at dinner. And then, of course, the rural difficulties, and you all know the issues that exist in some of the impoverished areas of the state with regard to community resources that could be drawn upon to help some of these things. So all the institutions now have received our first federal CARES stimulus allocation, which was designated for distribution to our students. And most of us awarded those monies to our Pell students on our financial aid and assistance students, and I think that money has offset some of the costs of home equipment and the like. We're in the process now of receiving our second stimulus allocation, which goes to the institutions to offset some of the costs associated with the crisis. And for many of us, some of that money will be used to replace some of the dollars that were expended in residence hall refunds and dining plan refunds and the like. So moving forward, very quickly, most of us will remain online for the summer or the greater part of the summer, and then there's the challenges for the fall. Online or on campus? And what's the deadline for making that determination? You know, I talked to 3 different presidents this morning. It's interesting, we all agreed that we're focusing pretty much on July 1st to July 15th as being a critical date to try to make the determination as to whether or not we're coming back on campus or whether or not we need to stay online in the fall. I will tell you that there are enormous implications for our communities in those decisions. I would remind all of you that our technical colleges and our universities are not simply asides to communities. We're in many instances the center of those communities, culturally and economically and socially. So our inability to come back into session and to mount up our efforts, I think, also hinder the ability of the many parts of the rest of the community, particularly in small areas, to move forward. Then there's a question of affordability. You know, depending upon the institution, tuition accounts for 80 to 95% of our budgets. The critical question now, the essential question, can parents or students who are struggling financially afford to pay that tuition in the fall? Even with no tuition increases or even tuition reductions, I think the state faces a challenge with regard to getting our students back and being able to afford those tuition costs. And then, of course, we face the double problem associated with what the appropriations will look like in the 2021 budget. It's not worth speculating on that, I think, until we see probably the BEA estimate maybe in July. We'll have maybe a better idea of being able to determine whether or not we're going to be able to bridge that gap effectively without substantially maybe restructuring and redeveloping parts of our curriculum. And then, of course, should we come back, I think all of us, every institution in the state, is focused on the possibility of another spike, another reoccurrence, and we're ever mindful of the fact that we've got to have flexibility built in to move back online if necessary, to clear out our dorms if necessary should that happen, and to be able to do it in a way that's done effectively and secures our ability to continue our educational effort. Let me pause here very quickly and just extend praise to the innovativeness and creativity of the state's faculty and the resilience and tenacity of our college students and parents. You know, frankly, there are many, many reasons to be proud to be a South Carolinian, but from the standpoint of the colleges and universities, watching what's occurred over the past month has been very spirit lifting. You know, I want to end by making a simple observation. You know, these days, very few people take education for granted. Our faculty are working too hard to provide it, and our students are working too hard to acquire it. And I think every university and college president in South Carolina are as proud as we can be of both our faculty and our students. So proud that we're determined to do whatever it takes to continue to secure their future educationally, whatever it takes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Now going to ask Helen Hill to touch very briefly on tourism and what she's seen. And then we'll have Chris Patterson, who's a small business owner from Spartanburg, talk about what he's seen in the business industry.
Well, as you know, Governor, it is my honor to sell our state every single day. And I have never been more proud of the citizens of South Carolina than I am right now. And I lived through Hugo, like many of you. I will say that the amazing leadership, Governor, that you provided, our elected leaders, your great cabinet, has been critical to our industry. This situation has surpassed any crisis our industry has faced before, in part because it happened so fast, and equally that it touched every single part of our industry. It was particularly hard coming off a great 2019, and 2020 had really started with some great momentum, including a direct flight to the United Kingdom. So the impact has been staggering. I won't repeat what Dwayne said, and I won't steal my good friend Bobby's thunder talking about restaurants, but I did want to briefly touch on air service. The impact to air service has been staggering. Passenger traffic is down 95% across all of our South Carolina airports. Air service nationwide is now more reminiscent of 1950. That's how few people are flying. Now, across the coast of South Carolina, our air service that we all depend on is driven by visitors. It is something that we will have to work hard to bring back. The South Carolina airports are at 5% capacity. Our legacy carriers like Delta and American have reduced their capacity 70% for the months of April and May. United Airlines has cut theirs to an even greater level. But the news is not all bad. With Dr. Cole and his great planning for Business Smart, and gosh, Dr. Cole, do I love that title, Business Smart, we are going to have to assure our citizens and our visitors that it is indeed safe to travel. But the new research that Dwayne and I are getting has the good news that there is going to be some pent-up demand for travel. It may be those folks that are home with their children are ready to get out. But also we as South Carolina are particularly positioned for success. We have our beautiful beaches, our great lakes, our state parks, and many outdoor attractions. It's tailor-made for a great recovery. So, Governor, I want to promise to you that we, the tourism industry, will be laser-focused on success.
back open is something we desperately need. Again, I think that sums up what I've heard from a lot of different folks in a lot of different sectors. There are a number of safety protocols and measures that small businesses will need to follow. It's kind of talking about that new normal that a lot of us have been mentioning. It's going to be new for a lot of small businesses, so a consistent message from this committee and some guidance will be important so that a lot of these small businesses around the state can operate in a manner to keep both their customers and employees safe. Businesses, both small, medium, and large, all face challenges, but in these difficult times, we need to harness the ingenuity of all the South Carolinians in a way that prioritizes human life and economic revitalization in our communities. Thank you.
Mayor Marilyn Hatley, who's one of our great mayors in the state of South Carolina, if you could give us a sense of what's happening on our with our political subdivisions and on the local front very briefly to give us a snapshot.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to say it's an honor to be serving with all you distinguished people in this room. Governor, thank you so much for asking. I would like to talk today about the challenges of the local government, but I want to set up about what is going on in our community because I think it's imperative that you know so you'll see the challenges that local governments are having. Our situation in our community has never been more than what it is now. It's an economic crisis. This COVID-19 crisis decimated our business. While none of us at this time know what the full impact of the crisis will be, we have projections showing that a conservative decline of at least 50% of our gross annual revenues. And what does this mean to us? Well, we create 38% of total monthly accommodations tax revenue for the state of South Carolina for the month of June 2019. It came from Horry County. We had $2.5 million in net taxable sales, which represent approximately 39% of our county's annual total, and that's created in March, April, May, and June. Horry County routinely counts for approximately 15% of the state's total net taxable sales. So as you can see, the loss of business in Horry County will have a major negative impact financially, not only on our cities, but on the state. Our challenges for our cities is going to be cash flow. Coastal communities will have all very specific cash flow issues as their local economy is nothing but tourism. And tourism is our base, and there is no tourism. Local governments will need to work with business owners and operators. And in some cases, we will have to forgive late payment penalties for such things as business license and property tax. Budgets will need to be adjusted. Local governments will need to ask for our state to help us financially and assistance across the loss of revenue. How are we going to reopen our city's halls? All of our city halls are closed to the public at this time. We have to have a protocol to be put in place. We have to have a PPE specifics. We need testing specifics. Return of the workforce. In my city alone, I have furloughed 200 employees. Fewer dollars coming in means a phased approach to recalling furloughed employees. Fewer employees mean a reduction in service and some positions that services can be eliminated for a minimum of 1 year. Those returning to lower paid positions may be taking a pay cut from what they are receiving on unemployment, as we have just heard. One of the biggest concerns for our businesses is the ability to get the employee back to work because of, under this stimulus unemployment program, employees that typically would be making $400 or $500 a week are now making $900 to $950 a week. So there is no incentive for employees to return to work till after July. We need and our cities to be open as soon as possible. And we understand we have to be vigilant on balancing the health and the care of our citizens with the opening of our businesses. We need legislative uniformity. There is much confusion created allowing various cities within close proximity to establish varying timelines and guidelines. Visitors and citizens are having to learn of each and every city's unique policies as far as whether you can stay, what can you do, and what can't you do. And I understand that there's a difference of how the COVID-19 has affected different areas within our state, but uniformity could be implemented by counties. What we really need is a blanket order. Precautions are necessary for all of us. We have staff shortage. Our staff shortage may exist in certain departments. There would be a need to develop child care strategies for those returning to work while schools and or daycares remain closed. We have a court backlog. There will be backlog of cases. Some may not have the ability to pay fines. Payment plans may need to be worked out. Plans would not need to be managed by already overburdened court staff. Backlogs could result in overcrowded jails, increased spread of COVID-19, possible prioritization of maybe home-based incarceration. Our sports tourism. Sports tourism is a big part of the economy for small cities. We need to identify and ready a protocol for maybe the lower contact sports. And we confirm existing reservations and we call train and appropriate staff. Our immediate steps is for all businesses would need to come up with a written and consistent standard operating procedure and protocols to be put in place before opening. They should be designed to make patrons feel safe, create to keep both patrons and employees safe. Procedures and protocols must be addressed. Our intermediate steps is assistance from the state, ongoing monitoring of viruses for possible second wave, COVID-19 testing materials, PPE, and contact tracing. Our financial assistance from the state with recovery based on size of economy, not population. And then our long-term step, we're looking at assistance from the state on ongoing monitoring of virus for possible second wave, COVID-19 testing, PPE, and contact tracing. In closing, I just want to say, in South Carolina, we are set in a perfect place to recover in tourism. And tourism is one of our largest industries that we have. We know, the studies show, that people will be traveling by cars or buses instead of by planes. They will be a driving destination. But what we have to do is we have to be ready. We are going to be fighting for our lives because all other areas know that a driving destination is going to be the vacation of choice for this year. So we're going to be in the fight of our lives. We need to work as hard as we can, which I know we will, to try to move our economy forward and in the correct way, get our state open again for business. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Bobby Williams, if you could raise your hand for the folks over here so they can see you down there. Bobby Williams with Lizard's Thicket and the Restaurant Association. If you would share a few very brief remarks.
I would first like to ask any of y'all tired of cooking at the house and eating at your house? I mean, if I get served tuna noodle casserole one more time, I'm going to have to go to the Department of Mental Health and do an intervention. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
I miss my favorite restaurants, and I know you do too.
I do too.
Governor, thank you for including the hospitality industry in the task force. Many have said our industry has been hit the hardest by coronavirus. After hearing Dwayne's most depressing report, you do get the award for the most depressing report. The restaurant industry is even more depressing. There's so many restaurants closed right now, and it's going to be a while before they get to be reopened. I talked to many restaurateurs, and they said, let's don't talk about what we've lost. That's water over the dam. Let's talk about a plan for the future. Our association formed the Hospitality Industry Resilience Task Force to develop a plan and strategy for reopening restaurants in Phase 1. The task force is a public-private partnership with 20 of our members from all over the state. Working alongside DHEC, University of South Carolina College of Hospitality, Retail and Sports Management, we are working on a plan for the gradual reopening of restaurants with 4 main goals: food safety, cleanliness and sanitizing, employee health monitoring, social distancing, with concerns for the customer's well-being. We are not planning to get open as fast as possible, but as safe as possible. With this approach, our commitment, as always, is to ensure that everyone has an excellent and safe dining experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. Bobby wins the award for following directions the best today. I'm going to, Lou?
I just wanted to say that I've listened to each of the speakers and to the reports, and I have some things that I think business can do to help all of you guys. And if you give me just 10 seconds, I'll go over them. We've decided to take a lead as a company, and we bought the testing equipment to do analysis and serology testing. I want to work with David Cole and others in the hospitals to provide extra testing. With that, we need nurses. We're going to need more nurses. We are going to need nurses who might need experience, and we can train them on how to do those swabs and so forth. We are set up to do the analysis work, and that allows for perhaps students in chemistry and others to come in and get practical experience. We are desperately, while we've been sitting here, we received approval from FDA to do extra amounts of bottles of saline because we've now seen a shortage in the saline bags. That being said, these things have to be autoclaved. I'm desperately needing welders. Welders need experience, send them over. So what I'm saying, we're hiring. I'm not asking this for free. We'll help the students, and we've got plenty of disciplines that we could do that. As I'm sitting here, I'm thinking we have been an essential service. We have allowed our folks to come to work. We can teach all of you how to disinfect, how to clean your places of business. We can offer our disinfecting services with vaporized hydrogen peroxide. We're happy to do that. And finally, what I would say is that we can also give you protocols, how to clean, how to do it effectively, how to achieve kill, and make sure that your environment is the safest for your customers and get your businesses back to work. And finally, I'll just tell you that we could host your database for contact tracing. And we've been feeding our workers every day, trying to use the local restaurants. Now I've decided we've got to start giving tourism gift cards out to help get you guys moving again. I just hope that helps a little bit.
Thank you, Lou. Thank you. I'll close out with a few brief comments, and then the governor's going to close us out with his charge and challenge. First, I want to thank the University of South Carolina. We're in the Pastides Alumni Center, or as I told the guy, I think we refer to it as the house that Harris built. But I want to thank USC. Also wanted to direct your attention on your placards on your table and on this in your sheet. You'll see where you're kind of we've got you slotted in your component group. Talk to each other. Talk to each other before your meetings. Make it productive so that when you get together, we can get some good recommendations for the governor. Finally, if you need to participate remotely, we're going to be able to do that. Governor, please, if you would, close us out.
Thank you very much, James. Y'all, I appreciate you coming very much. A lot of good information. We got a long way to go, but I'm confident we have the talent and experience and know-how to get it all done, and the energy and the spirit. Thank you very much.
Checking your levels. I don't even know if they have you turned on yet. I was just trying to give you a test. You hearing anything? Any levels coming through here? We're working on getting the audio turned up. We're just going to do one at a time. Yeah, we got Lou Kennedy coming up first. We're going to have the governor, I believe, Lieutenant Governor, and a couple others available. So.
Back on video.
All right. Are we getting good video? Do you have good sound levels? Do I need to go chat with them? Are we sounding good? Okay. All right. Are we getting good sound levels on the camera? Awesome. Okay. All righty. Is everybody ready for our first one? We've got Lou Kennedy is going to come up first.
Hello, everybody.
I believe I've been instructed just to take questions, so if anybody wants to ask questions, I will say my name is Lou Kennedy, CEO and owner of Nephron Pharmaceuticals Corporation. I'm happy to talk to you about what we're doing to be prepared or anything else. Yes. We got an approval for saline in a bottle form that allows us to make bottles which are in even faster fill than the saline bags that were so short during Hurricanes Maria and Irma. And so we applied to FDA actually a while back, and just unbelievably it happened today and in the middle of this pandemic. So we are going to start churning out even more types and sizes and various volume fills of saline. Yes.
You did a press call about trying to get more treatments.
I'm pleased to say that this Monday, one of the lines was approved. It was really less than 2.5, 3 weeks in total review. If I can say one thing, and I hope it makes it around this country, the FDA is working tirelessly. It is the best regulatory environment I have ever seen. We've gotten these approvals that normally take, well, years ago, 3 to 5 years. They've shortened it to 10 months. We got this one after we asked for the extra on March 27th. We heard within a week about what they needed extra. We sent that in, and the approval came Monday for that first line. Yes. We want to do the PCR testing that you're hearing about that gets the results in somewhere between, there's one machine that's 3 hours. I haven't gotten EUA approval on that one. So I looked today to buy instead one that takes 8 hours for testing turnaround. We've also bought the equipment today that allows us to do the serology testing. So my goal is to test our employees, test our neighbors. We'd like to start with 12th Street, which includes Nephron, Amazon, and Dominion employees, offer our services, and then move on around the rest of the Midlands. And after that, we want to get the people back to work once they've found out they may have COVID-19. Let's test them, make sure they're clear and clean to come back to work so we can be a part of keeping this economy moving. Yes, we announced that about we help our family members of the Nephron team. And so these were all ideas that came to my mind that would allow some of these students to get opportunities, experiential learning. It would allow us to get some more trays welded to get more of those saline bottles into autoclaves for terminal sterilization. So there's a lot of things that those of us who are in business and doing essential work could do to help our friends who may not be at work. We had to actually add a night boot camp class because we're onboarding 30 by day, 30 by night, and we do that every 2 weeks. And I've got about 90 people still to be scheduled into boot camps, and we are interviewing currently through Zoom and GoToMeeting, hiring more. We're at 1,200 full-time. Adding to that, we've got 850 teachers in our educator program who, some of them were substitute teachers, actually shared that because school is out, this is the only source of income they have right now. So they're working part-time at Nephron. And then we have about 100 students doing rotations and other types of learning at Nephron with about 2,000 reporting in, all of whom have received vitamin C, silver hand gel, Kleenexes, I'm trying to think, masks for free from us because we know it's important for us to keep them well and keep them coming back. Anything else? Thank you very much. We appreciate your coverage, and we really appreciate what you guys are doing. And if you need hand sanitizer, let us know.
Okay, we're actually going to get Dr. Cole and Christian Sora together. If they repeat your question, that it's just so that the audience can hear.
We're good here, distance-wise? Hey, good to see you.
First, I'll ask you first, where do we state hospitals as far as going back to more elective?
So hospitals are very incrementally starting to move into addressing some of the procedures that have been delayed over the course of the past month or so. Hospitals continue to perform emergency services throughout the pandemic and throughout this outbreak, and we're in the very earliest days of starting to get back to performing some of the procedures that we're able to wait a few weeks, but can't be delayed indefinitely.
I can add a little more depth to that too, because at least from an MUSC perspective, we put protocols in place in terms of patient testing so that we can keep our healthcare providers and our patients safe as we're looking to, and we have a whole triage system in terms of necessity and what the next steps are. There's clearly a level of surgery that's required. When it's delayed too long, you're actually harming the patient, correct? So, I'm a cancer surgeon. I always say, is cancer surgery really an elective? I don't think so in general. I mean, you can delay somewhat. So we're trying to ramp up as appropriately and safely as possible.
Can you comment on how many COVID-19 patients are actually in your hospitals physically at this moment?
MUC Health, as a system, the number changes daily. There's actually there are two categories. Ones that are proven, those that are being observed. I think we have about 45 patients who are proven within the system today. Those numbers are, I've made the comment that we have capacity. We definitely have capacity right now. I think we're in a situation where the resources are available if we head down this path correctly so we don't overwhelm the health systems. We see no evidence that we're going to be New York City. We know what could happen, and we need to keep it that way.
For context, 45 out of how many states is the system?
MUSC is 800. But understand, we do a lot of things other than take care of COVID patients. We need to prioritize that. We need to be available. So those numbers are I think the most important thing, rather than a specific number, they're manageable. We can manage these patients. And so I think as we move forward, I made the comment earlier, infection is local like politics. There's going to be a community where there's some sort of outbreak. We need to identify it. We need to tamp it down. We need to make adjustments, and therefore not overwhelm the local healthcare system so that they're in some sort of situation that can't provide the care that's provided. We have that breathing room right now.
And we're also making sure that as we ease back into some of these urgent procedures that we're doing so in a way that reserves the capacity that needs to be kept available in the event that we see a second wave.
In terms of preventing the spike of backslide, I guess, are you comfortable with the reopenings that have happened thus far, and what do you want to see happen before you take that next round?
I think that what's happened is there's an opportunity for people to step up and take responsibility about the next steps. Businesses and local leaders need to make the right decisions so we can move forward safely. That means there's got to be structure. There's got to be, I think, a new normal. It's not like, hey, the door's open, recess is out. We actually have to make good decisions. We corporately, we businesses, we leaders, we government leaders. So all those things have to come together very, I think, thoughtfully and quickly. I think there's another part of this too, which is we have the biology of this disease. We also have the psychology of this disease. Confidence and fear is something that has to be rebuilt by doing it correctly. Critical to this is monitoring and our ability to react and have appropriate data. Testing is ramping up. It's not like we don't have testing, we do. But that has to match our motion forward. As industry starts to move forward, we have to be able to match it with testing ability to monitor. And I think that's a lot of work that's still ongoing. We have capability. There's still work to do.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you much.
We've got Dr. Akil Ross here to speak from an education perspective. You'll remember him as a former National Principal of the Year.
Good afternoon. Good evening.
Superintendent Spearman said that one possibility for schools coming back in August was students coming in at different times. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think we're going to have to look for a little more information about exactly how they'll come in. I know Superintendent Spearman is forming a more technical task force to look at those intricacies. I think our position on this task force is to look at some guidance for the governor overall on how education can accelerate South Carolina.
Do you have any concerns about school starting back up?
Well, I think the reality is, our world has changed. And so how we start up is not how we used to start up. And I think one of the things that Molly Spearman really brought to light is that right now, as we learn from a distance, or we do the distance learning, there are three main formats that school districts are using throughout the state. So you have the e-learning, you have the blended, and you still have pencil and paper. So I believe that whatever form comes back, we have to think about those students who we haven't heard from since middle of March, and how do we engage them. And I think having the infrastructure to do e-learning for all students, I think whatever model you have when you come back, that is a critical part of our return.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
We got Lieutenant Governor Pamela Abbott. Thank you. Recognize her next.
Good afternoon, everyone.
So what is your role as we move forward?
Well, to work alongside the governor and get opinions from all these wonderful people that we've assembled here today with AccelerateSC and figure out what we can do to give a confidence coming out of this, making sure that all South Carolinians are confident and people from all across the country are confident to come back to South Carolina because this is a tourism state. So we want to make sure that we come out of this stronger than we came into it. And I think a lot of that will be with consumer confidence.
What have you been hearing from the business community? Obviously, you touched base with them a good bit. That's been a big role of yours. What are you hearing from business leaders, and what's the sense out there?
Well, I think the business community is happy for the temperament of our governor and how he has handled this crisis. I think the governor has handled it wonderfully, and they're excited to get back working. They want to be safe. As we heard Secretary Hitt say alongside the governor last Friday, consumer confidence is key. And so by this group here creating a good plan to come out, I think that'll be what we need to get consumers happy, to make our businesses happy, and get South Carolina rolling again.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
All right, then. How y'all doing? Wasn't this a good group? It's about as talented and dedicated group of people I've seen in one room in a long time. Questions? Shauna?
So, you mentioned that you talked with the president. What did he say to you, and what did you take from his comments yesterday to the governor of Georgia? What that might mean for South Carolina?
Well, it sounded like he disagreed with what the governor of Georgia did, who is doing what he thinks is best based on the advice and the information that he has. We see it a little differently here, but I imagine every state is going to see it a little differently. But we're going to get information, advice, guidance from the very talented people that were in this room today, as well as some different groups that are forming in cities and certain professions to figure out the best thing, the details of what we need to do, how to get South Carolina back to work strong, to regain our competitive advantages that we had when the virus came along without putting people's lives at risk. So we've got a lot of work, and as you heard from these different types of institutions, that every one size doesn't fit all. It's going to take a lot of thinking, a lot of planning. Of course, we've been getting information from a number of these people here today all along, and we'll continue to do that.
Are you worried that what Georgia is doing could lead to a spike there that could spread over to South Carolina?
Well, I think we're all worried that whatever anybody does could lead to a spike. We're looking to see what the other states, other cities come up with, ideas. That you have a lot of advisors, a lot of professional people that are writing articles about what's happened in other countries and what's worked and what hadn't worked. So as you heard here today, everyone is concerned that everyone wants to get back to work, but nobody wants to have anybody else get sick. We have to be very careful. And so that's what we are going to attempt to do step by step, probably be little steps. We're not going to rush into it. We're not going to move until we have good reason to move based on the science, the data, and all the information and the brain power that we can put together, as you saw in this room today.
Governor, do you have any early reactions to how folks are complying with the orders that you've lifted? I know there's some citations issued in Horry County dealing with being too close to people and dealing with.
Well, I think we're doing very well. We're still under the state of emergency order, and that means that automatically the price gouging rules are in effect, as you have heard from the Attorney General, and also that the congregation rule of 3 or more causing problems or threats to whatever the dangers are, and that in this case includes a threat to health. So we do have, the law enforcement has the tools they need to remedy those situations. We haven't had to use that many times, but I think compliance has been good overall in South Carolina, and that's why we took the steps that we've taken before. And it's very careful, as you noticed from listening to Superintendent Spearman yesterday and other days, that the decision about the schools was one that had to be made very, very carefully. And there are a lot of factors that went into it, and I think we made the right decision there. I think we've made the right decisions all along. We just want to keep on making them.
Governor, there's been some criticism about the makeup of this group that you've assembled. Not enough scientists, not enough black representation. What's your response?
I think this is as fine a group from all segments of South Carolina life as I've seen in one room in a long time. The talent and the experience is extraordinary, and the willingness of these people, all of whom have very busy lives, to come and do this, probably with the exception of Dr. Pastides, who's in Ireland, and he was on the tube there. He wasn't here today, but everybody was here. He was there. I mean, he's a highly renowned epidemiologist. We have highly renowned epidemiologists in DHEC. We have highly capable people in all the agencies, and this group is an extraordinary group.
Dr. Bell said on TV today, a TV interview, that we need 14 days of cases going down before we have mass gatherings, or even before people should go to church together. What do you think of that?
Well, Dr. Bell I think she's right. I think she is a premier epidemiologist. We always listen to her. I think it's important that we do that social distancing, and that's what we've been doing.
Governor, based on the comment that Mayor Hadley made and some other local officials are making, do you think you and the General Assembly are going to have to look at maybe some aid to local governments, much like the federal government giving aid to the state?
Well, that's right, but the question is, where's it going to come from? Because as you know, the economy is depressed. The predictions, one good bit of news, of course, it was anticipated we would have about a $1.8 billion surplus this year. Well, we're probably not going to have that, pretty sure about that, but that means we may not go in the hole as much as some of the other states are. But we're going to have to use every means at our disposal to find a way to get South Carolina back to work. The federal government is pumping a lot of money, even more and more every day, into all sorts of institutions as well as the unemployed people. But this could take a lot of work, a lot of thinking, and as it was mentioned today, a lot of coordination of all these things to be sure we're not overlapping where we don't need to, but we're reaching all the areas that we need to. So every option is on the table. How it'll end up, we don't know, but we're going to work it carefully, safely. We're not going to put the health at risk, but we must get the economy moving because their families, their children, their futures that are depending on going to school, having a job, and we must get our economy moving.
Brian Gaines said that y'all have already gotten part of the federal stimulus money and more is coming this week. How will you work with legislators to decide how to do it?
Well, that's why we had some here today. They were appointed by the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate to get the firsthand understanding of what it was talking, the issues being addressed here today, and we'll continue to do that because all of this money has to go to different things in the state. A lot of it will be ruled strictly by the federal rules under which it is sent to us. But there will be some flexibility. There'll be some decisions have to be made, and we want advice from every source, including, of course, the General Assembly. Yes, ma'am.
Close contact businesses, are there any guidelines that your office is going to put out in terms of helping them get back?
Well, that's what we're working on here. That's one of the things. Those close, you mean like the barbers and the hair salons? I know other states are doing that. I'm not sure what they've done in other countries, but I know that we will get all the best information we can and try to apply that, see how it impacts what we do here. But it's not time to do that. It's time to work on it and try to decide what we're going to do to have the best plan, to find the best ways. But it's not time to open those close contact businesses yet in this state, we think.
Governor, we're hearing from some people that say since they've been back to work that the places that they're working at are not providing proper safety or PPE for them at work. Is there any plan for you guys to require that those businesses provide that to their workers?
Well, we have required social distancing. We'll continue to the Emergency Management Division is in the field every day seeking supplies to see that there are plenty of the protective equipment so people can go back to work. But ultimately it depends on every individual understanding that they have to be their own doctor. They have to take care of themselves. They have to follow those rules that we've heard over and over from every information source, as we're washing your hands, keeping that distance. If you're sick, stay home. But the government does have a role to play, and that is to use every avenue that we can to see that that's available in our state. And we've been doing that. We keep an account, and we're going to keep doing it.
Governor, what sort of markers are you going to be looking for in terms of the next wave of whatever openings are coming up? I mean, you know, you've already said that the 14-day recommendation from the White House in terms of, you know, declining cases that they want to see before things start opening up. That's just a guideline.
That's a guideline,
So
and
what are you looking for
there's no real marker. You have to take all the factors into consideration, such as the compatibility of the different institutions opening at different times, the level of compliance among the people. If you have bad compliance, then you could have a decline, and then if you open something up and you have bad compliance with social distancing, then it's all for naught. So the social distancing, what we call that now, and the personal hygiene and all those things are really paramount in this. If we don't practice those things, then whether we stay open or closed, we're still going to have problems.
Governor, we're hearing about a couple of protests too, that people are planning to come to the State House tomorrow to protest to get the state more fully open. What would you say to those folks that are coming out and want to see more action taken?
I say that this is America. Yeah, everybody has a right of assembly, a freedom of speech, and we welcome anybody who wants to say anything to come on out and say it. We might learn something from them.
And what about absentee voting in the June primaries? Any plan to expand on that?
Well, those things are governed by law, and there would have to be changes in the law. As you know, our General Assembly is out right now. They need to come back and make those changes. What we're urging people to do is to use absentee ballot to the very fullest and get all the information out about that. We have those kind of tools are available without a change in law. We'll try to want to be sure that that's adequate to meet the challenge, but those are the kind of things that are under discussion, consideration that we're concerned about right now.
Two more. But Governor, along that line, when we're talking about poll workers who will have to go out there regardless,
there you go.
Money to maybe beef up PPE for these workers that have to be open?
We want to be sure that everyone is protected by what we call social distancing, by having the protective equipment, and that they're following the rules, and we'll do all that we can to be sure that is accomplished, because voting is one of the most important things we do in a democracy.
Do you believe concern about catching coronavirus is reason enough to request an absentee ballot?
I would think we'd have to see what the law says. The law has a lot of reasons for an absentee ballot. It's very flexible. It's very broad. There are a lot of reasons to do that. I think that if people are concerned, they should talk to get the information about the law provides, and if it is not adequate, then we can try to address it. But we're encouraging people to use those absentee ballots if they can. If they would prefer to go in and vote, do, but be sure to practice that social distancing.
Thanks, guys.
Well, you said that this group will meet for a month. Anything that you heard today to think that reopening the economy or even this group should go past 30 months, do you think it'll take longer than you initially thought?
Do I think it'll take longer to do what?
To reopen the economy?
Well, I mean, there are parts of it that are open now. There are parts that were never, as you heard, the manufacturing they were limited by the market. They had to close down some. But there are parts of the economy that were not, probably not affected. There are others that have been hit very, very hard. But we'll see. We're going to get the best advice from the people who can give it from any source. But the group that was assembled here today is a knowledgeable, dedicated, and experienced group as any I've worked with that I can remember. So we're deeply in their debt for their willingness to meet and to meet again and again. We don't think it'll take more than the 30 days that we've asked for their attendance. Won't be 30 days every day, but there'll be a lot of telephoning, a lot of talking going on. The subgroups will be meeting, and we'll probably assemble here maybe one more time, maybe two more times, maybe three, but it'll all depend on how much work we're able to get done and the facts, the statistics, the science, and the data that drives everything that we're doing. Thank you.